Chapter 12:10. Bufong clasped his hands behind his back, standing on the arena. He felt a little strange. Previously, on the heaven stairway, he was almost squeezed to the end of his rope. However, as soon as he entered this space, he felt that his condition had recovered to its peak. This made Bufong feel a little strange. Looking around, Bufong's figure stood on the arena. This arena was made of bones. It was unknown what kind of savage beast it was made of. It was incomparably huge, with fong-like railings around it. On the left side of the arena, there was a huge stone cage, in which an abyssal demon was imprisoned. The demon's skin was pitch black, with sharp ears and fangs. Its eyes were dark gold, and it had a pair of wings on its back, emitting an endless savage energy. Rumble. The stone on the stone cage slowly crumbled. As the stone cage gradually collapsed, the abyssal demon in the cage was slowly freed. The latter's dark gold eyes instantly locked on Bufong's figure. In those eyes, there was greed, killing intent, and excitement. That's right, excitement. Someone came to die again. How many years has it been? Finally, someone came to this damn inheritance. The abyssal demon's body was rather sturdy. It raised its sharp claws, pinching its own neck. After twisting it, the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Its dark gold eyes playfully locked on Bufong's figure. What a nostalgic taste. Human. The abyssal demon grinned. Finally, I can have a full meal. Abyssal demon? Bufong frowned as he watched. In his mind, his understanding of the abyssal demon was not very deep. He only knew that it was a kind of delicacy, which was why it was massacred by the nether prison experts. Nowadays, there were very few pure-blooded abyssal demons. However, he did not expect that there would be an abyssal demon in this inheritance land. From the looks of it, it seemed to be an existence that was imprisoned. Come on, chef's challenge. If I lose, this demon will have barbecued meat to eat. Roasted human meat. I really miss it. The abyssal demon grinned, revealing a mouth full of sharp teeth. Its claws were very sharp like steel knives. Bufong looked at this abyssal demon, the corner of his mouth twitching. Is the chef's challenge part of this inheritance? Bufong asked. This damned inheritance, it's nothing but a plaything that harms people. It's only you who keep coming here to die. The abyssal grinned. When it comes to cooking, how could you humans possibly compare to us abyssals? We started with the most primitive delicacies and continued to develop until today. If not for the invasion of those damned humans, the delicacies created by the abyssal demons would have spread throughout the world. The abyssal demon's eyes widened, and a brilliant light burst forth from his dark golden eyes. All right, you don't have to talk anymore. Chef's challenge, right? Come, let's end this quickly. Bufong said. The cooking skills of an abyssal demon, Bufong was very doubtful about this. In another arena, everyone had also met their respective opponents. These abyssals were sealed in this part of the world. Although they saw humans, they didn't personally attack. However, according to the rules, they had to have a chef's challenge with the inheritor. Moreover, it was a life-or-death chef's challenge. The abyssal demon in front of Bufong slammed his palm on the arena. Rumble. The arena began to tremble, and the ground began to crack. Suddenly, a stove made of bone slowly rose up. The abyssal demon reached out his claws, stroking the stove. The friction between his nails and the stove made a sharp noise that constantly entered people's eardrums. Come on, human. Feel despair. The abyssal demon laughed happily. According to the rules of the chef's challenge, the winner can live and use the enemy as an ingredient. The loser dies and becomes the enemy's ingredient. The abyssal demon said, as though he was telling Bufong the rules of the chef's challenge. His voice was cold and terrifying, as though he wanted to use it to make Bufong feel fear. Of course, Bufong didn't care about that. His mind flickered. The white tiger heaven stove instantly appeared and smashed into the arena, causing it to shake violently. His hand shook. The dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand, flashing with a dazzling golden light. The arena rumbled. The center of the arena slowly split open, and a stone frame rose from within. On the shelf, there was an ingredient. Oh, our luck isn't bad. Our ingredient is meat, the abyssal demon chuckled. He walked out of the bone stove, walking to the skeleton. Squinting his dark old eyes, he observed the ingredient. The scarlet ingredient was covered with patterns, which were meat patterns, which looked very exquisite. Bufong also walked out of the white tiger heaven stove. He curiously observed the abyssal demon from a close distance. The abyssal demon studied Bufong. Their gazes collided in the void. If there weren't rules, this demon would have torn you apart and drunk your hot blood, the abyssal demon said. Bufong twitched his mouth. The dragonbone kitchen knife spun, twirling in his hand. Then, with a flick, the piece of meat on the shelf flew high. Eventually, it was caught in Bufong's hand. Oh, this meat. Bufong's eyes narrowed slightly as if he felt a little incredulous. This meat is very strange. Bufong murmured. This is Qilin meat. You've never seen it before, right? The meat of the dark Qilin can be considered a pseudo-sacred grade immortal ingredient. The main thing is that the dark Qilin isn't a purebred fire Qilin, so its meat quality isn't at the level of a sacred grade immortal ingredient. However, it's already a good ingredient for our chef's challenge. The abyssal fiend said. He stretched out his hand, grabbed the Qilin meat, and slowly walked towards the bone stove. Abyssal demons had relatively long arms, and they were also covered in muscles, giving off a strong sense of strength. The ingredient of the chef's challenge will be this Qilin meat. I hope you, human, can take out a dish that I like. Otherwise, I'll feel bored. The demon said. The next moment, that piece of Qilin meat was placed on the stove. The sharp nails suddenly grew longer, turning into a kitchen knife. Claws tore through the air. In an instant, the Qilin meat was sliced into neat pieces, and every piece was exactly the same size. This move slightly surprised Bufong. We, the abyssal demons, are best at making meat. Because there are very few beasts in the abyss that eat meat, it's hard for us to eat meat. Every kind of meat is preserved with a secret method. Regarding meat, we know much more than you humans who live in peace. The abyssal demon's dark golden eyes glanced at Bufong. Then his fingernails, which had turned into kitchen knives, poked all the pieces of meat. Every piece of meat had a small hole poked through it. Boom! The abyssal demon took out a huge cage from under the stove, from which he took out a jar of spices. He opened the jar and sprinkled the spices on the pieces of meat. Different spices were sprinkled in different proportions. As the spices diffused, they became colorful. Spices were the most commonly used ingredients by the abyssal demon. A huge bone wok was placed on the stove. Swish! The abyssal demon threw those pieces of meat into the wok, kneading them with both hands, making the spices fully permeate them. Bam! The lid of a jar of wine was opened. A rich, mellow wine aroma gushed out of the scarlet wine jar. This wine aroma was not ordinary. It was the authentic abyssal demon wine. The abyssal demon had made it himself, and each jar had to be brewed with a complicated method. This kind of wine was very rare in the abyss. Each jar could be sold at a sky-high price in Nether Prison. The abyssal demon poured the scarlet wine into the wok. Sizzle. The abyssal demon took a sip, his face showing an intoxicated look. This wine aroma was not only rich, but it also carried the body fragrance of the abyssal demon girl and the fragrance of a virgin. This was what made the abyssal demon so addicted. The wine was poured into the wok, kneaded again, and fermented. After the pieces of meat were soaked in the wine, they were instantly sucked in. The pieces of meat swelled up. The abyssal demon placed the swollen pieces of meat out with satisfaction. Rumble! The scarlet flames surged, burning, roasting the bone wok. The temperature slowly rose. A strange aroma rose from the bone wok. The abyssal demon grabbed the pieces of meat soaked in wine and placed them in the wok. Sizzle! The meat pieces were placed on the edge of the wok. Instantly, the aroma of meat and wine mixed, spreading. Bufong had been paying attention to the abyssal demon's cooking method. The other party's cooking method surprised Bufong a little. The abyssal demon's cooking method was really different. However, it was not the time to admire it. The abyssal demon was good at cooking. This was not an exaggeration. If it were any other time, Bufong would have the leisure to eat some abyssal demon's food. But now it was a chef's challenge. Either you die, or I die. Bufong did not want to become the abyssal demon's food. Chila meat was definitely an extraordinary meat. Holding the Chilan meat, Bufong fell into deep thought. How should he cook the Chilan meat? It was not just a question of how to cook it. The Chilan meat had to be more delicious than the abyssal demon's food. The chef's challenge was not a joke. Bufong's face became serious. Bufong looked at the bright Chilan meat, his eyes solemn. A moment later, an idea popped up in his head. He had an idea about how to cook the Chilan meat. His mind flickered. He took out the spirit fruits from the heaven and earth farmland. The vermilion fruit and the pineapple fruit were placed on the stove. The dragon bone kitchen knife spun in his hand, twirling. His mind flickered. Bufong's aura changed instantly. The heart of cooking path emerged, throbbing as rumbling sounds echoed unceasingly. The knife slashed down. The Chilan meat was instantly cut into small pieces. Bufong took the pieces of meat and placed them into a blue and white porcelain bowl. He then added the yellow spring helplessness wine and other seasonings to marinate them. While marinating, Bufong began to process the vermilion fruit and the pineapple fruit. The vermilion fruit was cut into small pieces, squeezing out the sour juice. The pineapple fruit was very similar to the pineapple in his previous life. As an ingredient for this dish, it was very suitable. He cut the pineapple fruit into triangular pieces, arranging them on the plate. After squeezing out the juice, he couldn't throw the vermilion fruit away. Bufong took out a small blue and white porcelain bowl, placing the vermilion fruit inside. Using a wooden mallet, he continuously pressed and pounded it, turning it into a bright red sauce. His mind flickered, and the black turtle constellation wok appeared. With a loud boom, it hit the stove. Bufong opened his mouth, spitting out a white flame. The flame burned fiercely, twisting the illusionary void. He flicked the white flame into the white tiger heaven stove. Half a wok of oil was poured into the black turtle constellation wok. Gulp, gulp. Waiting until the oil temperature rose, Bufong placed the marinated Chilan meat into the wok. Then he began to fry. In the distance, the abyssal demon squinted, looking at Bufong. His face was playful. A trembling sound came from the bone pot in front of him. Beams of light shot out from the meat pieces stuck to the side of the wok. With a bang, the aroma of meat filled the air. The abyssal demon grinned, taking a deep sniff of this long-lost aroma. Gazing at Bufong, the corners of the abyssal demon's mouth rose, revealing a confident smile. This human's cooking. How could it be as delicious as his abyssal double-cooked meat? He was sure to win this chef's challenge. This human would definitely become food in his mouth. Chapter 12:11. The abyssal double-cooked pork was the dish that the abyssal devil was best at. His dark gold eyes locked on Bufong in the distance. The devil's mouth curved into a cold smile. Its sharp teeth shone with a sharp luster. Sizzle. Around the bone wok, steam and aroma filled the air. The meat, which had been marinated by the abyssal devil and placed on the edge of the wok, began to turn golden, and the skin became crispy. Smelling this aroma, the abyssal devil couldn't help but take a deep breath. In the distance, Bufong's movements were neither fast nor slow. The black turtle constellation wok was half filled with oil. Under the burning of the white flame, the oil in the wok began to boil and churn unceasingly. Steaming hot air surged up and rushed into people's mouths and noses. This oil wasn't ordinary. It was a kind of spirit beast oil. Bufong didn't like to use vegetable oil, so he usually used spirit beast oil when cooking. It was made from the fat on the surface of the spirit beast's meat, which was boiled to obtain the oil. This kind of oil contained a strong aroma of spirit beasts, which would make the taste and texture of the dishes mellower and more attractive. Gurgle, gurgle. The golden oil began to boil, and white bubbles kept surging. Bufong's mind flickered. Pieces of marinated meat were put into the wok. As soon as they entered the wok, sizzling sounds echoed. In just a blink of an eye, the meat was completely covered by the boiling oil. The thick aroma diffused, tickling people's taste buds. On the other side, Bufong had also prepared the seasoning he needed. In the arena, the two of them didn't look at each other. Their eyes were fixed on the food in their hands. Actually, the key was to finish the food in their hands. This time, the dish Bufong wanted to cook was sweet and sour meat. Sweet and sour meat made from chilan meat. Bufong was looking forward to it. In the wok, the marinated chilan meat, as the oil boiled, gradually changed its color, becoming very golden. It was different from the Abyssal Devil's cooking method. The Abyssal Devil used the heat of the wok to make the surface of the dish crispy. But Bufong chose to fry it. Of course, both of them had their own benefits. Deep frying could allow the fragrance to be wrapped under the surface layer of oil. Once bitten, the fragrance would surge out like a rainbow. As for the Abyssal Demon's method, it relied more on his bone pot. Because of the material of the bone pot, it was basically impossible for the meat to be scorched black. Moreover, the meat that was roasted in this way was incomparably golden and emitted a thick fragrance. It could be said that Bufong's flesh was reserved when it exploded. As for the Abyssal Demon's meat, it was unbridled. Their styles were completely different. Walala! In the frying pan, one by one, the pieces of meat were fished out. Sizzling sounds could be heard coming from the pieces of meat. The oil on the golden skin was still boiling. The exploding oil gave off a faint sound. In the distance, the Abyssal Demons also prepared all the meat they needed. Pieces of golden crispy meat were placed in the bone bowl by him. The Abyssal Demon took out spirit fruits and ingredients, then used a sharp bone knife to cut them into thin strips. When the thin threads were placed together, they looked very colorful and eye-catching. The Abyssal double-cooked meat had very high requirements for the quality of the meat, and the ingredients were also very high. The ingredients could set off the taste of the meat, making the taste more attractive. He heated up the bone pot. The color of the bone pot suddenly changed. Sizzle. Then he poured some oil. After the oil exploded, he poured the shredded ingredients into the pot. The spatula was a kind of bone spatula. When he stir-fried in the pot, the shredded ingredients seemed to come to life, dancing ferociously in the pot. After a long time, they were immersed in it. At this time, the Abyssal Demon laughed and poured the double-cooked meat into the pot. Boom! Flames instantly shot up to the sky. The wok began to shake. The ingredients in the pot were tumbling, rushing out one by one. Dense steam swirled around them. The ingredients were stained with boiling oil, which made them look like they were overflowing with color. Sizzle! A spoonful of balsamic vinegar was sprinkled into the pot. Instantly, the aroma in the pot rose, and a faint sweet and sour taste diffused. The restrained light in the pot finally burst out, shooting up to the sky. Perfect! The Abyssal Demon was so excited. The corners of his mouth cracked, showing his sharp teeth. The Abyssal double-cooked meat was done. Boom! The bone pot was swung. The dishes in the pot flew out. A plate was thrown out, carrying all of them. Golden light overflowed, overflowing in all directions. Chunks of golden meat with oil dripping from them. Strands of ingredients that looked like silk twisted beautifully on the meat. The Abyssal Demon's wings shook. His nose slightly moved, coming in front of the dish, taking a deep breath. Instantly, the aroma from the dish entered his mouth and nose, making him look intoxicated. In the distance, Bufong's cooking was also in progress. The sweet and sour meat was almost done. The vermilion fruit was turned into a red sauce by Bufong with a wooden mallet, and the pineapple fruit was cut into golden triangular pieces. The ingredients were basically ready. The black turtle constellation wok was heated. He poured in the ingredients and stir-fried them. After stir-frying, he poured the vermilion fruit sauce into the wok, stir-frying. Sizzle. The red vermilion fruit sauce was stir-frying in the wok, releasing a sweet and sour taste. After stir-frying, it wasn't over yet. Bufong's hands didn't stop moving. The stir-frying process continued. Soon, the sauce in the wok became sticky from the stir-fry. Then, it almost reached Bufong's expectation. He poured the fried chilan meat and the cut pineapple fruit into the wok, stir-frying. When the vermilion fruit sauce completely covered the meat and the pineapple fruit, the dish was finally finished. He prepared a clean blue and white porcelain plate. Next to the black turtle constellation walk, the dishes were poured into the porcelain plate. Steaming hot air surged out. The vermilion fruit sauce covered the chilen meat and the pineapple fruit. Therefore, the entire dish looked orange-red. The color was very beautiful and appetizing. Bufong used a cloth to wipe the impurities around the porcelain plate. Then, Bufong took a step back, indicating that the sweet and sour chilen meat was done. This dish was covered with immortal energy. The thick immortal energy, fragrance, and steam lingered, constantly rising into the sky. Although it was fragrant, Bufong was surprised to find that this time, he didn't need to face the lightning punishment. This was a little interesting. Could it be that in the inheritance, the dish's lightning punishment was also blocked? This would save him a lot of trouble. Bufong's dish was finished. The abyssal demon in the distance squinted, watching for a long time. Apparently, he was also curious about the dish in Bufong's hand. The color of the sweet and sour chilen meat was very beautiful, and Bufong's plate presentation was very exquisite. The dish's fragrance was brought out to the fullest. While Bufong was having a chef's challenge with the abyssal demon, the other arenas were also having chef's challenges. Their opponents were all abyssal demons. Of course, those abyssal demons had different appearances. Some of them were even female demons. However, the abyssal demons were all ugly. Even female demons didn't have any beauty in them. At this moment, Realm Lord Dit's blonde hair fluttered in the wind. The movements of his hands were constantly changing. The kitchen knife was spinning and the ingredients were flying. Apparently, he was also concentrating on his chef's challenge with his opponent. Actually, it wasn't a joke. This chef's challenge was a chef's challenge to the death. The loser would become the latter's ingredient. So, it was either live or die. No matter if it was the abyssal demon or Bufong's team, they all tried their best to cook. Moreover, since they couldn't sense the lightning punishment, no one knew how good their dish was or whether they could surpass their opponents. They couldn't help but feel a sense of uneasiness in their hearts. Even Bufong, who was extremely confident in himself, was a little nervous at this moment. Bufong held his dish, walking slowly. His vermilion robe fluttered. He walked to the center of the arena, where the chilen meat was placed. However, now, it had become a table, which was used to place their finished dishes. Bufong's dish was sweet and sour chilen meat. The abyssal demon's dish was abyssal double-cooked pork. The two dishes looked similar, but their taste was like heaven and earth. Rumble, rumble. All of a sudden, a beam of light shot down from the sky, enveloping the entire shelf and the two dishes within it. Rumble. It was as if there were waves of air rushing down from it. Bufong's eyes gazed at the rack. The abyssal demon also felt a little nervous, puffing white smoke from his nostrils. The result would determine life and death. How could they not be nervous? The confident abyssal demon also felt the pressure. He felt that he had to win. Otherwise, when he finally got out to take a breather, he would become a human's ingredient. It would make him feel so aggrieved. This is the divine light that evaluates the dishes. It will evaluate them from all angles, said the abyssal demon. He opened his mouth, revealing his sharp teeth, which emitted cold light. Are you ready to die? The abyssal demon said. White and tender human meat is more delicious when used to make double-cooked pork. The demon's laughter echoed throughout the arena. Rumble. Beams of light also fell from the surrounding bone arenas. They enveloped the dishes on the racks. Inya and the others wiped their palms and fixed their eyes on the racks. As a genius of the Nether Chef clan, Yi Yun was very confident in his level. How could he lose to a bunch of animals? Rumble. Suddenly, the beams of light over Bufong's arena began to flicker. The pupils of Bufong and the abyssal demon constricted. The result was coming. It wasn't just Bufong. Even the people in the other arenas were looking over one after another. Sizzle. The beams of light disappeared completely. The entire arena fell into silence. Only the abyssal demons, panting, could be heard. Suddenly, the ears of Bufong and the abyssal demon twitched. Their eyes focused. The next moment, the abyssal demon's expression changed dramatically. He found that sharp bones were poking out from under his feet. No, no. The abyssal demon's pupils constricted, and he felt a chill run down his spine. I lost. How could I lose? Rumble. No matter how the abyssal demon struggled, a rumble echoed out. The ground cracked, and bone spears shot out from within, finally turning into a large palm. The huge palm slapped down toward the abyssal demon. The demon, who was extremely confident, was completely terrified at this moment. The wings on his back spread, and he turned to crawl out of the bone arena. However, as soon as he moved, he was pierced by bone spears. Slash! Slash! Scarlet blood spurted out. The abyssal demon's face was full of resentment. I lost. There was no doubt that his dish had competed with Bufong's. In the judgment of the divine light, he had lost. If he lost, he would have to pay the price and become his opponent's ingredient. Swish! As the huge palm pressed down, the abyssal demon was constantly devoured by the bone spears. Bufong's pupils constricted as he stared at the terrible scene in the distance. After a long time, white demon bones emerged from the ground and slowly piled up on the arena, becoming one of the construction materials for the arena. To think that this was the origin of this arena. The abyssal demon disappeared. Finally, at the place where he disappeared, a skeleton was piled up, and on the skeleton was a plump piece of meat. That meat was about the size of a wash basin. Without a doubt, it was the abyssal demon's meat. The nether chefs in Nether Prison liked abyssal demons very much. They were the best at cooking abyssal demon's meat. Bufong clasped his hands, gently exhaling. This chef's challenge could be said to be the cruelest chef's challenge Bufong had ever encountered. The price of failure was too high. The loser would not only die, but he would also become the enemy's ingredient. This was the most despairing thing. Bufong was a little scared. Bufong had no interest in the abyssal demon's meat. However, he still put it away. Bufong walked to the middle shelf. On it, there were two dishes. One was his sweet and sour Chilean meat, and the other was the abyssal double-cooked meat of the dead abyssal demon. Bufong took out his bamboo chopsticks and began to taste his dish and the abyssal demon's. Although he won, he wanted to know how he won. Boom! Boom! In the distance, on the other arenas, beams of light began to flicker and flicker. This meant that the result was about to appear. The results of the other arenas were about to be revealed. Bufong's eyes turned, falling on the arena where Dit Realm Lord was. His eyes narrowed. The beams of light on the latter's arena disappeared. The life and death of Dit Realm Lord and his abyssal demon's opponent were about to be decided. Bufong picked up a piece of orange-red sweet and sour Chilean meat and put it in his mouth, his face serious. There, Realm Lord Dit's arena began to shake. No, how could I lose? However, the result of Dit Realm Lord's arena hadn't appeared yet. A roar of disbelief rang in Bufong's ears. Bufong turned and saw Yiyun's arena. Under Yiyun's feet, bone spears emerged one by one. The death caused by failure seemed to be slowly closing in on him. Chapter 12:12. The taste of Chilean meat was somewhat similar to that of dragon meat, but contained more fat, and it was more greasy than dragon meat. However, it was more suitable for making sweet and sour ribs. Dragon meat was suitable for making sweet and sour ribs because the crispness of the bones and the texture of the ribs complemented each other. Chilean meat was greasy, but it was very fragrant, and its soft texture made people feel more comfortable. In fact, compared to Chilean meat, Chilean bones were the true treasures of Chilents. Chilean bones contained all the essence of Chilents, and when used to make soup, the essence would seep into the soup and sublimate it. Therefore, compared to Chilean meat, Chilean bones were more precious. Bufong picked up a piece of sweet and sour meat. The orange-red sauce stained it, and as he picked it up, a sticky liquid flowed out. There was a hint of golden yellow in the orange-red sauce, which was the result of deep frying. When mixed together, it added a lot of flavor. A piece of sweet and sour meat entered his mouth. After being fried, the crispy skin had become much softer. As soon as he bit down, the soft Qilin meat burst out. Oil flowed out of it and into his mouth. Bufang's eyes lit up slightly. It was Bufang's first time eating Qilin meat, but he had eaten a lot of dragon meat. Compared to dragon meat, Qilin meat was more greasy, and they both had their own benefits. He picked up a piece of pineapple flesh that was cut into triangles. The pineapple flesh had a sweet and sour taste and texture. When he bit it, it was crispy. The crispness that the meat lacked was reflected in the pineapple fruit. Bufang nodded as he ate. In the distance, a terrible fluctuation had broken out. All eyes were fixed on that direction, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. Yi Yun's eyes were filled with fear. The reason for that was because he discovered that there seemed to be a supreme aura locked onto his body. It seemed to have locked onto his soul, and no matter how he struggled and shook his body, he couldn't get rid of it. It was an aura with a boundless will of death. I don't want to die. I haven't become a divine chef yet. How can I die here? Yi Yun roared. His entire face contorted, and his eyes were filled with malevolence. His original elegant and dignified posture had disappeared. In the face of death, no one could remain calm. Gaga. Stop struggling. Just obediently become my food. I will cook your flesh and blood well. Across from Night Cloud, the abyssal demon began to laugh. His mouth was filled with sharp teeth that dripped with blood. Boom! Yi Yun's expression suddenly changed. With a turn of his body, he charged out of the arena. However, just as he was about to leap up, he was pressed to the ground by a terrifying force. Pucci! Bone spears shot out from the ground, piercing through his body in an instant. Hualala! Fresh blood immediately flowed down. Yi Yun's face instantly turned pale. As a little saint, his vitality was quite strong. But after being pierced by the bone spear, the energy in his body rapidly disappeared, as if it was completely absorbed by the bone spear. The bone spears piled up and eventually turned into a huge bone palm. Pucci! In a flash, the bone palm covered Yi Yun's body. Yi Yun was filled with fear and reluctance. He reached out his hand to get rid of it. Save me! Save me! Yi Yun's face was full of fear. His eyes fell on the distance, where Ingya's face was solemn. The number of bone spears kept increasing, completely covering Yi Yun's body. His sight gradually disappeared. Soon, Yi Yun's body was completely devoured. The bone spears seemed to be wriggling. Swish! Finally, the bone spear turned into a skeleton. There was a piece of meat on the skeleton. Yi Yun's bones had turned into white bones and seeped into the bone arena. Ingya sucked in a cold breath. He felt a chill run down his spine. Initially, he wasn't that nervous, but at this moment, he suddenly became nervous. His face turned pale. He had never thought that Yi Yun would lose to an abyssal demon in cooking. Losing the chef's challenge was equal to losing his life. Yi Yun's cooking skills were not much worse than Ingya's. If Yi Yun was defeated, what did that mean? It meant that even he, Ingya, could be defeated in the chef's challenge. He took a deep breath. Ingya's heart beat violently. Thud! Thud! Ingya clutched his chest. His eyes turned to Bufang in the distance. There, Bufang looked at him calmly. He picked up a piece of double-cooked meat cooked by the abyssal demon and stuffed it into his mouth. Munch! 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 As Bufang ate, he met Ingya's eyes. The double-cooked meat cooked by the abyssal demon was completely different from the sweet and sour meat. The crispy texture was somewhat out of Bufang's expectations. More importantly, this crispy texture also contained a sweet and sour taste. He had to admit that the abyssal demon's cooking skills were exquisite. They were comparable to ordinary Qilin chefs. Their skills contained the unique craftsmanship of the abyssal demon, but they were still lacking in many aspects. After making a comparison, he knew why he had won. To be honest, the difference between the sweet and sour meat and the double-cooked meat was not very big. Bufang was even somewhat lucky to win. In the distance, a shrill and miserable howl resounded. Realm Lord Dit sat on the ground. He was panting heavily. He had won. He had won by a narrow margin. His face was full of fear as he turned to look at Bufang with an excited look on his face. The outcome of the match in Ingya's arena was decided. Buzz Ingya also won the battle. This made the latter's tense heart suddenly relax. He breathed out a long sigh of relief. After the fear, all that was left in him was excitement. After putting away the abyssal demon meat, Inya glanced at Bufong and Realm Lord Dit in the arena. His expression became solemn again. He never thought that the two chefs from the Heaven Chief realm would last until the end of the Divine Chef's inheritance. This had completely deviated from their original intention, but did not matter. He, Inya, would definitely crush these Heaven Chief realms and obtain the Divine Chef's inheritance. Rumble. The arena of bones suddenly shook violently. Bufong shoved a piece of sweet and sour meat into his mouth and raised his brows slightly. Boom! Then a loud rumble rang out. The entire white bone arena collapsed with a loud rumble. The bones cracked and turned into white bones, flying in the air. Congratulations on passing the second test. In midair, a pair of golden eyes suddenly appeared in the void. A majestic pressure spread out and enveloped everyone. The third test begins now. Under the surprised gazes of Bufong and the others, the white bones on the ground began to reform once again. In midair, Bufong and the other two were hovering. The white bones reformed very quickly. Before long, they had turned into 3 huge demon mouths, which were pitch black and stretched as far as the eye could see. The 3 arenas had turned into 3 demon mouths. The atmosphere became even more tense. At the same time, the atmosphere became more tense. Bufong took a step forward. The 3 of them landed in front of the huge demon mouths and looked into them with deep eyes. Just now, they had felt the horror of this arena. Yin, a little saint, was devoured by the white bones just like that. He turned into flesh and blood and was taken away by the abyssal demon. This was a huge blow to them. They knew it was not that easy to obtain the Divine Chef's inheritance. However, they never thought that it was so cruel that failure would mean death. However, the more it was like this, the more it aroused their desire to see what was going on. Of course, it was mainly the benefits of the Divine Chef's inheritance that stimulated them. From the very beginning, the Divine Chef's inheritance had shown its irresistible charm. Buzz in the sky. A pair of golden eyes emerged. A terrifying pressure suddenly spread out, causing the 3 of them to tremble. The third test begins now. The test is the life and death challenge. Those who pass the test will be rewarded with the dark Qilin bone. A dull voice echoed through the void and exploded in everyone's ears. Bufong and the others looked at each other and didn't know what to say. The 3 pitch-black demon mouths were like the entrances to death, causing people to feel hesitant and indecisive. Should they enter or not? After hesitating for a while, they had to make a decision. Realm Lord Dit's eyes were firm. No matter what he was facing, he would step into it. The Heaven Chief realm must have a Divine Chef. For this goal, he had gone through countless life and death situations to get here. He could not give up because he was afraid of death. That was not Realm Lord Dit's style. Bufong boy, I wish you good luck. I'll enter first. If I don't come out alive, you must inherit my art of nudity. Realm Lord Dit waved his hand at Bufong. His long robe fluttered, and his golden hair fluttered. He chose one of the 3 demon mouths and stepped into it. Bufong couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. The art of nudity, you'd better keep it for yourself. Bufong wasn't interested in it, and he took a deep breath. Since they had come this far, no one would give up. Thus, he also stepped into it. Soon, Ingya's figure disappeared into the boundless darkness. Only Bufong was left. The demon mouths seemed to carry endless disasters, shrouding Bufong's body. Bufong didn't hesitate. With his hands clasped behind him, his vermilion robe fluttered, and he stepped into it. The culinary life and death challenge. Bufong wanted to see it. City Lord Mengqi stood at the bottom of the stairway of culinary arts. Looking at her beating heart, her face was calm. She knew that with her talent, it was impossible for her to pass the stairway. Clad in her immortal robe, Mengqi looked around and sighed softly. Suddenly, a repulsive force appeared between heaven and earth. Mengqi felt as if her body was being pushed out of this space. There was a loud bang. The scene in front of her changed abruptly. Then, Her body shot out like a cannonball. Swoosh! The wind howled in her ears. City, Lord Mengqi's vision blurred for a moment. A moment later, she found that she had landed on a flat ground. Yellow sand rolled around her. In the distance, a golden beam of light soared into the sky. In her eyes, the golden beam of light was constantly dissipating. Boom! Luya gave up resisting. He was hit by a terrible force and was sent flying backward. Coughing blood, he knelt on one knee. The eyes of the two judges, shrouded in blood-colored robes, were full of killing intent. When they saw Mengqi, who had been expelled, they grinned sinisterly. Capture these two and bring them back to the Abyss City. When the guy in the inheritance comes out, we'll use these two as bait to catch the big fish. Bam! As soon as the judge's voice rang out, Luya was fiercely pressed to the ground by someone. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness. Mengqi was very calm. She said that she would leave by herself. Swoosh! Scarlet Chain swept over and bound Mengqi and Luya. The two of them were taken away by many law enforcers. At the entrance to the abyss, on the edge of the cliff, a figure wrapped in a blood-colored robe stood there, his face cold and solemn. Suddenly, light surged from the bottom of the abyss. Then, one figure after another shot out. 3 judges emerged, followed by Mengqi and Luya. Where's Blood 3? The great judge asked indifferently without turning his head. The 3 judges looked at each other and seemed a little embarrassed to speak. At last, they said he was killed. The few nether prison youths who can kill Blood 3 haven't shown up yet, right? The great judge said with his hands clasped behind his back. The 3 judges didn't know what to say. At last, they explained the situation. They didn't know how to express their feelings that Blood 3 was killed by a 9-star true immortal. It was a joke that a 2-revolution little saint was killed by a 9-star true immortal. Most importantly, they let the boy escape. Trash. I'll give you 3 days. If you can't kill the rest of the nether prison geniuses and the boy who killed Blood 3, don't come back to me alive, the great judge said coldly. The plan is about to be carried out. The execution of the plan is imminent. I don't want any unforeseen events to happen. If the Abyss wants to get rid of the nether prison's control, this is the only chance. So you can only succeed. Chapter 12-13. The Culinary Path of Life and Death. The entrance was a pitch-black devil's mouth made of white bones. Bu Fong felt that the owner of the divine chef's inheritance seemed to like the abyssal demon very much. Many things he had seen so far seemed to be related to the abyssal demon. This made Bu Fong feel a little strange. Realm Lord Dit and Ingid stepped into the culinary path of life and death. Soon, their bodies were shrouded in darkness. No one knew where this devil's mouth led to. Bu Fong didn't know either. He raised his head, his hair fluttering as he looked at the huge golden eye in the sky. His eyes were filled with terrifying might. Bu Fong narrowed his eyes and stared at it for a long time. Only then did he let out a long breath. Turning around, he stepped into it. It was an incomparably dark intersection, going all the way deep into it. Bu Fong clasped his hands behind his back, walking forward at a steady pace. The culinary path of life and death. Bu Fong wanted to see how terrible this so-called culinary path of life and death was. After passing the culinary path of life and death, he would be rewarded with the Dark Shielan Bone. This thing was what he needed to complete this time's system task. So to Bu Fong, it was not bad. Tap, tap, tap in the quiet and dark tunnel. There was no sound at all. He kept walking along it. Soon, even the last bit of light at the entrance disappeared. Then darkness came, enveloping Bu Fong's body. It was extremely cold. Bu Fong opened his mouth. A ball of white flame shot out of his hand, burning fiercely in his palm. A scorching heat burst out, sweeping across the whole place. The entire intersection lit up. All of a sudden, the sound of something tearing through the air resounded. Bone spears shot out from the bone walls, shooting toward Bu Fong. They were extremely fast, aiming at Bu Fong. Oh, Bu Fong froze. This was the culinary path of life and death. According to this situation, it seemed to want to use brute force to kill him. The feeling the bone spears gave Bufong was the same as the death threat he felt when he lost the chef's challenge against the abyssal demon. What happened to the life and death trial? Just to kill someone? Bufong frowned, and his expression did not look too good. He felt that this chef's challenge of life and death didn't live up to its name. The life and death test is divided into the life test and the death test. The life test is the path of cooking tests, and the death test is the path of death. In his mind, the system's voice rang out involuntarily. Bufong was stunned. He didn't expect the system to explain to him so enthusiastically. However, according to the system, did that mean that he had stepped into a life and death trial? There were 3 entrances and 1 death gate. The probability of 1 in 3 was just right for him. Bufong was speechless. However, Bufong was also a little disgusted by this design. According to the meaning of the life and death stage, obtaining it depended on luck. Was he simply trying to reduce the number of competitors? What was the point? Bufong exhaled softly. His divine will spread out. There seemed to be a faint golden light flashing in Bufong's eyes. The next moment, Bufong sensed the gaps between the bone spears that came from all directions. Bufong moved his body and quickly dodged the bone spears that came from all directions. Boom! Boom! One bone spear after another drilled into the ground and shot out again. Every time it whistled, it carried a terrible, piercing power. Once it pierced through, it would be completely pierced by the other bone spears and turn into powder. This was not good news for Bufong. This seemed to be a little different from the divine chef's inheritance he had imagined. Bufong twitched his mouth. There were so many tests. The only decent one was the stairway of culinary arts at the beginning, and the others were simply a joke. How could such a careless test be considered a divine chef's inheritance? Bufong exhaled softly. Swish! He tilted his body slightly, and a bone spear pierced through the ground. Bufong's eyes narrowed, and a vicious look flashed in them. His mind flickered. Foxy suddenly appeared and was held in his arms. Little who was taken out of the heaven and earth farmland, was a little confused. At this moment, she was holding a spirit fruit in her arms and eating happily. After being called out by Bufong, she blinked her pretty eyes and looked around, not knowing what to do. Then, Little Who came to her senses. She excitedly climbed up Bufong's body and finally lay on Bufong's shoulder, wagging her tails and stroking Bufong's face. Bufong rubbed Little Who's head. Then he asked Little Who to open fire and blow up the passage. These bone spikes annoyed him a little. Little Who seemed to understand. She opened her mouth, and one golden energy shell after another shot out of it. Swish! The golden energy shells rumbled and shot out. The whole passage was blown up. In this deadly trial, Bufong chose to force his way through. Since there was no passage, he would blow one up. Bufong was not very concerned about the so-called divine chef's inheritance. If it weren't for the system's task, Bufong would not have come to this land of inheritance. Bufong had his own path. His culinary path was his own. The path of others was not suitable for him. Boom! 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 The bone walls kept crumbling. The whole passage seemed to be collapsing. His mind flickered. Xiaopi suddenly appeared. Bufong stepped on Shrimpy, and the latter instantly turned into a golden streamer, traveling through the tunnel at an extreme speed. It turned into a streak of golden light, shooting into the distance. The deeper they went, the more terrifying the bone spears became. Little Who's speed was getting faster and faster. The passage seemed to be engulfed by a sea of flames. Rumble. Bufong's behavior seemed to have angered the will of the divine chef's inheritance. The pressure in the passage suddenly increased. Bufong frowned. His divine will surged out. With the mental force of the divine dragon, the vermilion bird, the white tiger, and the black artifact spirit, Bufong's divine will become stronger and stronger. Bufong's divine will spread out in an instant. He forcibly pushed the will of the divine chef's inheritance away. A boom rang out. Bufong smashed the passage and flew out of it. Broken bone fragments drifted in the air. Bufong squeezed out of it, stepping on Xiaopi and holding Little Hu in his arms. His vermilion robe fluttered as he hovered in midair. Life trial, death trial, life and death trial. Bufang had used brute force to force his way out of the death trial. After rushing out of the death trial, Bufang hovered in midair. He glanced around, and what he saw stunned him. It was an open area. In the distance, there was a huge stove in front of him. A figure sat cross-legged on it, his head bowed and surrounded by an aura of death. An abyssal demon? Bufang asked, puzzled. If Bufang was right, that figure should be an abyssal demon, the master of the divine chef's inheritance. This divine chef is an abyssal demon. Bufang took a deep breath. It was as if he had sensed something extraordinary. In front of the abyssal demon's corpse, there was a huge 7-colored altar in front of it. All kinds of ingredients were placed on the altar, which were wrapped in hovering white light shields. Rich energy was bursting out of them. Without a doubt, they were all top-grade, sacred-grade, immortal ingredients. Bufang saw true dragon meat, phoenix feathers, qilin bones, and many others that were overflowing with energy. Among them, the dark qilin bone was the purpose of Bufang's visit to the inheritance this time. Bufang hovered in midair. The entire spacious space was constantly being compressed, creating waves of pressure. In the distance, Realm Lord Dit and Ying were sitting cross-legged. They seemed to be immersed in some kind of illusion and were undergoing an intense test. Bufang didn't interrupt them, although this divine chef was an abyssal demon. But what if this abyssal demon really wants to give me the inheritance? If Bufang interrupted Realm Lord Dit, wouldn't that be the same as cutting off his opportunity? He asked Xiaopi to put Bufang on the ground. He stepped on the ground and slowly walked toward the altar. There were many good things placed on the altar. Obviously, these were the rewards for completing the test. Perhaps this divine chef's inheritance was not fake. At the center of the altar was a pitch-black stone tablet. Bufang looked at it from a distance and read the information in it. It recorded the deeds of this abyssal demon. He was a divine chef abyssal demon, the creator of abyssal cuisine. He was the overlord and former leader of the abyss. Judging from the information, this abyssal demon was not an ominous figure. When he was young, he followed a peerless divine chef to the prosperous Heaven Chief realm to learn cooking. After learning cooking all his life, he returned to the abyss and preached many ways of cooking. He also recruited many chef apprentices and carried forward abyssal cuisine. However, as time went by, this abyssal demon grew older and older. His apprentices were divided into various schools of cuisine in the abyss, competing with each other. For the sake of his inheritance, he imprisoned him and even cooked his flesh and blood into food, hoping to become a divine chef. This abyssal demon was deeply grieved. He set up his inheritance in the abyss because the culinary skills he learned from humans were also qualified to be inherited by humans. This was also one of the reasons why the Nether Chef clan of Nether Prison attacked the abyss. It could be said that this abyssal demon divine chef lived in the heyday of the abyss. He did not live through the dark period when the abyss was ruled by Nether Prison. Therefore, this inheritance did not have any dark side. He just wanted to find a suitable inheritor. After reading the introduction, Bufang no longer had any ill will toward this inheritance. Of course, he still complained about the setting of the life and death trial. If he hadn't asked Little Hu to spit all the way here, he might have died in the life and death trial. Therefore, Bufang did not have a good impression of this abyssal demon divine chef. Bufang walked up to the colorful altar. He glanced around at the ingredients placed on the altar. Finally, he reached out a hand and put away the black qilin bone. The qilin bone was rich in spirit energy, and specks of light swirled around it, making it look dreamy. After putting away the qilin bone, Bufang no longer coveted the other sacred-grade, immortal ingredients. Bufang was not a greedy man. The reason he came to this inheritance was for the dark qilin bone. Besides, he had passed the life and death trial with great difficulty, so he needed a qilin bone to calm his nerves. After putting away the qilin bone, Bufang had completed the system's task. The system's serious voice resounded in Bufang's head. Congratulations to the host for completing the temporary task. You have entered the abyssal divine chef's inheritance and obtained the dark Chilin bone. Temporary task reward. 20% increase of true energy cultivation base. The system's voice faded away. Bufong's eyes lit up. Then he felt the true energy vortex in his dantian begin to spin violently. His aura rose abruptly, reaching a critical point and breaking through a small shackle. The true energy liquid in the true energy vortex surged violently like a vast ocean. It had begun to crystallize. Once it crystallized, it meant that Bufong's true energy cultivation base had stepped into the Saint realm. Even so, Bufong's current cultivation base was almost equal to that of a half-step Saint realm expert. His fighting prowess was much stronger than before. Moreover, Bufong's divine will seem to be stronger, which improved Bufong's overall strength. With the current divine will, Bufong should be able to throw out 2 ordinary perishing pots. Rumble. Just as Bufong sensed the increase in his cultivation base, the ground under his feet suddenly shook. This caused Bufong to be slightly surprised. He glanced at Realm Lord Dit and Inya, who were sitting cross-legged on the ground in the distance. He furrowed his brows. Then he turned around, stepped on Xiaopi, and turned into a beam of golden light that shot up into the sky. There was a loud bang. He rushed out of the inheritance land. Although the inheritance was good, it was of little value to Bufong. He had his own path. In the golden light, a beam of dark golden light tore through the air. Xiaopi carried Bufong and rushed out of the inheritance land. As soon as they came out, they saw a vast wasteland. In the distance, law enforcers wrapped in blood-colored robes stood on the wasteland with their eyes closed. When Bufong appeared, they all opened their eyes, which shone brightly. Then, a shrill voice rang through the void as if it was delivering some news. Bufong stood on Xiaopi's back. He immediately felt a tingling sensation on his skin, as if he was being locked down by streams of mental force. 2 teams of law enforcers were waiting for him outside the inheritance land. Human riding a shrimp, you finally appeared. Lord Judge asked us to stay here and kill you. Leave your life here. The voice of a little saint resounded through the void. Then a terrible aura filled the sky. One law enforcer after another charged at Bufong crazily. Pitch-black spears rose from the ground and shot up into the sky. They crazily shot toward Bufong. They were so dense that they blotted out the sky. Chapter 12:14. He emerged from the golden light of the divine chef's inheritance. Bufong didn't expect that there would be a team of law enforcers waiting for him. This is interesting. It seemed that the 3 judges also wanted to kill him, just like Bufong wanted to kill them. Boom! One spear after another shot out of the ground, pressing down on the air as if they were going to pierce Bufong into a sieve. Bufong's mind flickered. A white formation immediately floated in front of him. The next moment, a bright light spun in the array. Soon, a huge figure slowly floated out from the formation. It was none other than Xiao Bai. Boom! As soon as Xiao Bai appeared, his mechanical eyes flashed with lightning, and the sizzling sound of lightning arcs rang out incessantly. The metal wings on his back spread out with a clanging sound. With a swoosh, Xiao Bai's figure flashed across the sky like a bolt of lightning. As Bufong's cultivation base reached the half-step Saint realm, his fighting prowess had also broken through the shackles. Whitey's battle prowess had also broken through the shackles. It had devoured countless lightning bolts and reached the battle prowess of a half-step sage. Now, he had finally reached the Saint realm and possessed the fighting prowess of a little saint. However, it was clear that Xiao Bai was only a first-stage little saint. But it was enough. A vortex emerged on Xiao Bai's abdomen. Within the pitch-black vortex, there was energy swirling. A rumbling sound echoed in the sky. A war god stick appeared in Xiao Bai's hand. Thousands of black spears were hurled at him from below. Xiao Bai flapped his wings and hovered in midair. He swung the war god's stick and spun in his hand. Strong winds kept whistling down from it. Lightning arcs emerged in the sky. It spun like a windmill, stirring up a fierce gust of wind. Boom, boom, boom. One black spear after another shot toward him. They collided with the windmill formed by the lightning arcs and were immediately blasted apart by the lightning arcs. The pitch-black dregs floated in the air, fluttering and scattering all over the ground. Bufong stood on Xiaopi's back with his hands clasped behind his back. Watching Xiao Bai's domineering battle prowess, his eyes flickered. Xiao Bai had become more and more powerful. This was a good thing for Bufong. With a flick of his hand, a steaming explosive meatball appeared in front of him. Bufong then passed the explosive meatball to Little Hu. Little Hu grabbed the meatball excitedly and swallowed it. Hula! The windmill stopped abruptly. Then, lightning arcs fell from the war god's stick. Xiao Bai's figure blurred in the void, and he suddenly rushed toward the group of law enforcers below. The rod smashed down. The war god's stick suddenly enlarged, bringing with it a terrifying gust of wind as it pounded the ground. The entire ground exploded, and terrifying explosions soared into the sky. The law enforcers screamed miserably as they were blasted apart. However, most of them had a brutal aura as they dashed toward Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai alone could hold back 10,000 enemies. Along with his breakthrough, Xiao Bai's lightning became fiercer. With a sweep of the stick, shadows scattered everywhere. The little saint of the law enforcers team took action. This little saint's cultivation base wasn't bad. He wielded a long, pitch-black knife, making it impossible for anything to pass through. His knife slashed at Xiao Bai, wanting to cut Xiao Bai in half. However, Xiao Bai's war god stick rose, scattering the knife energy. They were like illusions, flashing through the air like streaks of afterimages. He appeared in front of the little saint. Then, he and the little saint clashed. After activating his killing mode, Xiao Bai was like a real battle maniac. Every part of his body seemed to have turned into a real sharp weapon. Every time he attacked, it was difficult for the opponent's little saint to resist. Only Xiao Bai was fighting alone. After the earth-shaking battle, the entire wasteland was cracked and full of holes. A small team was completely wiped out. Xiao Bai held the sizzling war god stick with one hand, while his other hand grabbed the head of a law enforcer. Boom, boom, boom. Cuts appeared on Xiao Bai's body, and white smoke rose. Boom. The little saint was beaten like a dead dog by Xiao Bai. His body was covered in cracks, as if he was about to explode. He was dying. Xiao Bai grabbed his head and lifted him up. Bufong landed, indifferently glancing at the little saint. "Where's the judge?" asked Bufong. "You're dead. Your companion is in the hands of the judge. Killing me won't help. The judge will cut you into 1,000 pieces." The little saint burst out laughing. Then, his body suddenly burst into a dazzling light. He was about to self-destruct. Bufong frowned. Although the terrifying energy fluctuations on the little saint's body were getting more and more intense, Bufong didn't care at all. Instead, he was lost in thought. He raised his hand, which was holding a 7-colored crescent dumpling. He gently stuffed the dumpling into the mouth of the little saint. The latter's eyes suddenly widened. His body, which was about to self-destruct, froze. My companion is in the hands of the Abyss Judge. Who is it? Is it Mengqi?" Bufong stroked Little Hu's hair and said thoughtfully. Boom! Xiao Bai loosened his grip, and the little saint fell to the ground. Then, Bufong and Xiao Bai soared into the sky and hovered in midair. The man and the puppet flew away. The little saint's self-detonation was the real explosion, a complete explosion. Boom! Boom! The whole ground trembled violently, as if it was about to crack. Bufong watched indifferently, and his expression did not change. The flames devoured everything. The power of the little saint's self-destruction was not weaker than that of Bufong's perishing pot. As Bufong's cultivation base improved, so did the power of the perishing pot. Bufong withdrew his gaze from the raging flames down below. He cast his gaze into the distance and gently exhaled. Mengqi should have been expelled from the divine chef's inheritance and then taken away by the 3 judges. They want to use her as a threat. Bu Fong bowed his head in thought, his eyes flickering. The next moment, his gaze became focused. It's time to end the killing mission. In that case, let's go to Abyss City. Bu Fong's voice seemed to be whispering in the air. Then, Whitey's scarlet eyes shone even brighter. The metal wings on his back flapped, tore through the sky, and sped into the distance. Carrying Bu Fong on his back, Xiaopi turned into a beam of golden light and sped into the distance. Down below, the flames formed by the self-destruction of the little saints surged and dissipated. The golden light of the divine chef's inheritance flickered. It was still unknown who would get the inheritance, Realm Lord Dit or Inya. Outside Abyss City, above the towering blood-colored city wall, a figure sat cross-legged on a huge rock. A chilly wind blew over, causing his hair to flutter in the wind. On the wall, the law enforcers stood solemnly, looking into the distance. Their auras merged together, forming a terrible aura that towered into the sky. In the center of the wall, numerous blood-colored chains intertwined with each other, swaying in the air and lashing out at the void. The chains locked a pitch-black netherworld ship. On the ship, Mengqi was bound. Luya, covered in blood and with a weak aura, was also bound. The wind blew over and slapped them, bringing with it a strong aura of death. The judge's blood-colored robe fluttered. He raised his head and looked into the distance, his eyes fixed on the void turbulence in the distance. He seemed to be waiting for something. Today was the third day, the last day the great judge gave him. The law enforcers of Abyss City had been dispatched to carry out the great judge's plan. As for the judge, he stayed in Abyss City to wait for the young man who killed Blood 3. He believed that the young man would definitely come. After all, he had prepared a big gift for the young man. Suddenly, in the boundless void turbulence, a sonic boom rang out. The blood-robed judge opened his eyes, which emitted a blood-colored light that seemed to tear the darkness apart as he stared into the distance. Over there, two silhouettes flew over at high speed. One was wrapped in a golden light, while the other was wrapped around Baiguang. They arrived in an instant. A deafening rumble rang out. Buzz, the golden light dissipated, revealing a figure. It was a young man riding a shrimp, and beside him was Baiguang, a puppet. This young man was the one who killed Blood 3. He was also the one he was waiting for. Boom! On the wall, all the law enforcers opened their mouths and roared. Their roar seemed to turn into a deafening sound that shocked Bu Fong and instilled fear in Bu Fong's heart. On the netherworld ship, wrapped in chains, Mengqi slowly opened her pale face, her eyes a little confused. In the distance, she saw a familiar figure. It was Bu Fong. Bu Fong came to Abyss City alone? Is he crazy? At Mengqi's side, Luya, covered in blood, slowly raised his head, opened his eyes with difficulty, and looked at Bu Fong in the distance. I didn't expect there to be such an existence in the Heaven Chief realm. His courage is commendable, Luya said. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, but he looked somewhat bitter. He is a miracle, Mengqi murmured. A miracle? Impossible. Even the three most talented nether prison youths might not have the courage to come to Abyss City alone. This is suicide, Luya said. Although he said that Bu Fong was courting death, there was a rare look of admiration in his eyes. He was not a chef, but a genius of the Shadow Demon clan, but he admired the strong the most in his life. I believe in him. He is a miracle, Mengqi said firmly. Rumble. On the mottled city wall, the blood-robed judge rose to his feet. His eyes shone like torches, filled with monstrous killing intent as he stared straight at Bu Fong in the distance. The sky above the city wall seemed to be covered by a vast blood-red hue. The crimson-robed judge grabbed the bloody chain with one hand and pulled hard. A clattering sound rang out, and the netherworld ship trembled. He seemed to want to intimidate Bu Fong with this. In the distance, Bu Fong approached with an expressionless face. His striped red and white vermilion robe fluttered in the wind. As soon as Bu Fong approached Abyss City's territory, the judge's killing intent soared. Listen to my order. All law enforcers attack with all your might. Kill. A shrill cry burst out of the judge's mouth. Then it spread out like a thunderclap. Rumble. On the city wall, one terrible aura after another spread in the air. One law enforcer after another burst out with a boundless fighting spirit. Beams of blood-red light turned into surging energy and shot toward Bufang. In just a flash, Meng Qi and Lu Ya's eyes were obscured by the dazzling energy. Bufang's figure was instantly devoured. Outside Abyss City, in the boundless void, one nether prison warship after another approached slowly, emanating terrible pressure that crushed the void. The warships of the Nine Revolution Nether Chef's clan, the Shadow Demon clan, and the Horned Demon clan, they arrived one after another. The three clans of Nether Prison charged into the Abyss. The Abyss had betrayed the Nether Prison and used the Divine Chef's inheritance as a prelude to slaughter the young geniuses of Nether Prison, including the Great Sage who was guarding the Abyss. This had completely angered the Nether Prison. The three clans discussed together and decided to send an army. Each warship was guarded by a Great Sage. It was as if a great terror was approaching from the void. At the edge of Abyss City, the army of the Abyss had gathered. The great judge held a huge blood-red scythe in his hand. His blood-red robe flapped noisily as he looked at the three huge Nether Prison warships in the distance. The corners of his mouth slowly curved into a grin. In the abyss, in the cave, a rumbling sound rang out. A black dog, reeking of alcohol, shot out drunkenly, turned into a beam of black light, and sped away in a flash. The black dog walked in the void, strutting like a cat. In his mouth was a wine jar. His face was hazy. Behind the black dog was a ferocious-looking young man with a pair of wings on his back. He roared furiously and kept chasing. Every move he made caused the void to collapse. After a long time, the winged young man stopped in midair, his eyes gleaming with dark golden light. Looking at the black dog strutting in front of him, he trembled with anger. Chapter 12:15. Deep Abyss City, the judge stood on the city wall, his blood-red robe fluttering in the wind. His eyes were like torches as he gazed at Bufang in the distance. As soon as he gave his order, the law enforcers on the city wall moved. All of them dashed into the void, bursting with terrifying power as they aimed at Bufang and Xiaobai. Xiaobai's scarlet mechanical eyes flashed. The metal wings on his back spread open, clanging unceasingly. Then, Xiaobai grabbed the war god stick and dashed out like a human-shaped fighting machine. Lightning exploded on his body, making Xiaobai look like he had turned into a bolt of lightning. The lightning bolts came fast. The war god stick was the color of iron, with lightning arcs moving around it. Countless spears shot out, aiming at Xiaobai. Xiaobai held the war god stick and swung it like a windmill. Terrifying gusts of wind shot out from the stick, and airwaves swirled, blowing back the black spears that were coming at him. The metal wings on his back shook, clanging and exploding. A series of whistling sounds tore through the air. In just a blink of an eye, they turned into sword lights that filled the sky, shooting toward the law enforcers. Whitey alone was almost able to hold off nearly 100 law enforcers. Of course, there were some who slipped through the net. These law enforcers passed by Xiaobai, heading straight for Bufang. Compared to the heavenly immortal puppet, who had reached the little saint realm, this young man was weaker and easier to deal with. The sound of something breaking the air echoed. Someone stepped through the air, aiming at Bufang. He wanted to crush Bufang completely. Bufang clasped his hands, standing in the void. On his shoulders were Xiao, Opi, and Little Hu. Their eyes rolled as they watched the law enforcers coming at Bufang. Bufang's face didn't change in the slightest. He exhaled softly. The judge stared coldly at Bufang, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a sinister grin. "Kill this brat. Go," the judge said coldly. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, figures soared into the sky one after another. In an instant, it covered Bufang's eyes. Almost all the experts who had stayed behind to guard the Abyss City had shown up. Most of these law enforcers were at 9-star true immortal realm. There are also some half-saint realm. There were only 2 little saint realm captains. However, these 2 little saint attacked Xiao Bai and entangled Xiao Bai. The others charged at Bu Fong one after another. Looking at the ferocious faces of the group of people who were madly charging towards him, Lin Fan's eyes widened. Bu Fong's eyes suddenly revealed a trace of blood. It was the blood in his body that was boiling. Roar! The next moment, Bu Fong's figure suddenly broke through the air. His striped red and white vermilion robe suddenly turned crimson. The crimson color enveloped Bu Fong's body, making Bu Fong look as if he was burning in a raging flame. Bu Fong's spirit sea suddenly boiled, and ripples of energy spread from the divine wolf phantom hovering over it, then exploded in an instant. Boom! Bu Fong moved. Like a crimson arrow, he shot out at high speed. In just a flash, he approached Bu Fong. The black turtle constellation Wok appeared in his hand. The pitch-black turtle constellation Wok was covered with a layer of earthy yellow halo. The eyes of a half-step saint expert who was charging at him suddenly widened. Bu Fong's mind flickered. Then, the phantom of a black turtle emerged behind him. The huge black turtle seemed to blot out the sky and support a part of the world. The black turtle roared. Bu Fong raised the black turtle constellation Wok and swept it out. Boom! A half-step saint swung his long knife and collided with the black turtle constellation Wok. A muffled sound rang out. The long knife was slapped away. The law enforcer's eyes shrank. In his eyes, the black Wok smashed down with unparalleled power, smashing onto his face. He felt as if his head was about to explode. The bones on his face seemed to be deformed. Cracking sounds rang out incessantly. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Like a shooting star, the expert was smashed to the ground by Bu Fong. Bu Fong stepped on the void. The vermilion robe on his body was engulfed in flames. It was as if a vermilion bird was bathing in fire. The flaming feathers on Bu Fong's back slowly flapped. Bu Fong's figure seemed to have turned into a crimson lightning bolt, approaching at high speed. Holding the black turtle constellation Wok with one hand, Bu Fong's face was expressionless. This time, he didn't use Little Hu. Bu Fong used his own strength to crush him. His divine will, his surging mental force, his physical strength, and the god of cooking Set. Bu Fong's fighting capacity was not weak at all. He didn't have any fighting skills. But Bu Fong didn't need any skills at all. What he needed to do was crush him. No one could stop the Wok. Boom, boom, boom. Holding the black turtle constellation Wok, Bu Fong struck like lightning. One Wok at a time. Under Bu Fong's black turtle constellation Wok, the law enforcers were smashed away like dumplings. They were either dumbfounded or vomiting blood. One figure after another flew backward and hit the city wall, causing it to keep rumbling. There were even a few cracks on the patterns on it. The 2 little saints and Xiao Bai were fighting. Every time Xiao Bai's war god stick swept, it would stir up thunder and wind, making the 2 little saints tremble. They had to dodge. The battle was very fierce. Although Xiao Bai's fighting capacity was only that of a one-step little saint, it was not a problem for him to suppress the 2 little saints. Without the little saint, Bu Fong was almost invincible among those at the same level. Every time the black turtle constellation Wok collided, an opponent would be sent flying backward. Bu Fong hovered in the air. The flaming wings on his back were dazzling, making Bu Fong look like a true god. Boom! He swung the black turtle constellation Wok with one hand. The pitch-black turtle constellation Wok shot out. It spun in the air and quickly grew bigger and bigger. Eventually, it turned into a pitch-black mountain, crushing toward the Abyss City with a huge, oppressive aura. "You're courting death," the ruling emissary roared. His body stomped on the city wall, shooting out like a cannonball. He approached in an instant. His fist hit the black turtle constellation Wok. With a thud, the black turtle constellation Wok rippled. The black turtle constellation Wok, which was pressing down like a small mountain, was actually forcefully pushed back. Swoosh! The black turtle constellation Wok shrank. It shot back. Caught by Bu Fong, it flew backward with the help of the momentum. Bufong's figure burst out, heading straight for the ruling emissary, who had finally made his move. He was a second-grade little saint. His cultivation base was very strong. However, this time, Bufong planned to face him head-on. The blood-colored beam of light collided with the crimson beam that Bufong had transformed into. The ruling emissary's eyes were cold. A mere half-step saint dares to compete with me? You're courting death. Boom. The ruling emissary's aura was like a stormy sea. The cultivation base of a second-grade little saint was extremely strong. Above his head, two streams of the will of the great path turned into roaring blood dragons and charged toward Bufong. Bufong's face was indifferent. The black turtle constellation wok was thrown out. His palms swung over the wok. It made the black turtle constellation wok spin more violently. As it spun, the void seemed to be unable to bear the weight and began to shatter. Boom! The collision broke out in an instant. Bufong's black turtle constellation wok was sent flying backward in just a flash. Bufong's figure didn't move at all in the void. With a wave of his hand, the black turtle constellation wok disappeared. Then, a beam of golden light shot out as if it had come from the ancient times. The dragon's roar shook the sky. The dragon bone kitchen knife appeared. Boom! A phantom emerged behind Bufong. It was a gigantic phantom that stood between the heavens and the earth, its pressure almost collapsing the void. The illusory figure was holding the saber. Slowly, the knife soared into the sky toward the judge, who was entangled by the two dragons of the will of the great path. The knife energy condensed rapidly. Heaven and earth seemed to change color. One slash, cutting immortal, Bufong shouted. The dragon bone kitchen knife slashed down. Boom! The dragons of the will of the great path were still flying up. They collided with Bufong's knife. A terrible explosion rang out. The impact of the force sent Bufong flying backward. It's not bad for a half-step saint to have such a cultivation base. Unfortunately, you have no idea how terrifying a second revolution little saint is. The blood-robed judge's figure kept changing positions in the void. All of a sudden, he appeared in front of Bufong. You'll pay the price for killing Blood 3. The judge said coldly. You'll pay the price in blood for killing Blood 3. Bufong's hair was fluttering in the wind. Not just Shwe 3. You and the other two judges will all die. Not just Blood 3. You and the other two judges will all die. Bufong said with a straight face. Bufong's roar soared into the sky. Bufong's roar rose into the sky. Little Hu and Xiaopi, who were on Bufong's back, soared into the sky. Xiaopi turned into a beam of golden light and dashed under Bufong's feet, holding onto Bufong's body, making him move faster. Meanwhile, in Bufong's arms, Little Hu opened his mouth. Terrifying energy kept gathering in it. Boom! An explosion rang out at a close distance. A beam of golden energy suddenly flew out. The blood-robed judge's pupil shrank. His body spun in the void. The dragon will collided with the energy cannonball, causing an earth-shaking explosion. There was a rumbling sound. Flames soared into the sky. Two figures were sent flying backward in the void. Bang! The blood-robed judge rolled, then stomped hard on the wall of Abyss City. The entire city wall caved in from a stomp. Swish! A blood-colored scythe slashed across the sky. A ripping sound rang out. The blood-robed judge charged at Bufong again. The blood energy in the sky gathered rapidly, turning into a hurricane. A ripping sound rang out. The scythe's blade light blotted out the sky. Bufong stepped on Xiaopi. Xiaopi's body turned into a beam of golden light. He suddenly appeared in the void, moving in an instant. He dodged the judge's attack. Cannon after cannon shot out. They collided with the blade light. The sound of explosions kept surging, and a rumbling sound rang out. The battle had suddenly entered a white-hot state. Xiao Bai and the two little saints were fighting fiercely. All of a sudden, Xiao Bai's scarlet eyes flickered. A little saint attacked. Xiao Bai didn't dodge. He used his steel body to resist the palm, and his whole body caved in. However, Xiao Bai also took advantage of this opportunity. His fan-like palm smashed the little saint's head. The fierce attacks fell in an instant. All kinds of attacks fell on the little saint's body. The latter was blasted into meat paste. The little saint didn't even have time to scream before he was killed by Xiao Bai. The war god stick shook. With a ripping sound, it pierced through the body of the remaining little saint. Then he threw it down. With a boom, he was nailed to the city wall. He had nailed a little saint to death. Fresh blood flowed down the city wall. In the distance, the judge, who was fighting with Bufang and suppressing Bufang, narrowed his eyes. He didn't expect that a puppet could kill two little saints. Suddenly, a seven-colored crescent dumpling kept enlarging in front of his eyes. The judge was shocked. There was a loud bang. The divine seal, dumpling, exploded. A blazing white light suddenly shone, covering the judge's body. The judge was shocked. Then, he found that he couldn't move his body. He was bound by a terrible force. The energy in his body couldn't be released. What kind of trick was this? Bufang's figure approached at high speed. Suddenly, a silver lotus pot appeared in his hand. Seeing the pot in Bufang's hand, the judge's pupils constricted. It was the same thing that Bufang used to kill Blood 3. The silver pot made him feel a terrible aura of death. One breath, two breaths, the judge's eyes widened. He seemed to be able to hear the sound of his heart beating. However, he couldn't move. He could only watch helplessly as the young man threw the pot in his hand at his chest. Boom! The dried pot seemed to carry a tremendous force as it instantly slammed him against the city wall. Bang! The city wall caved in. The next moment, a rumbling sound rang out. After the white brilliance was released for a while, it spread out in waves. The huge white lotus collapsed the city wall, causing countless rubble to roll down. A mushroom cloud soared into the sky, shocking countless people. On the other side of Abyss City, the great judge and the others, who were facing the many nether prison warships, were shocked. They jerked their heads in the direction of the city's destruction. Then they were shocked to find a shocking explosion was taking place in the direction of the city wall. What's going on? The great judge's eyes were bloodshot. He roared furiously. The front line was fighting the enemy, so why was the rear being bombarded like this? Kill them. With a long roar, the nether prison warships approached. A terrible pressure shook the void. There was a peerless figure standing at the front of each of the three warships. It was a great sage who seemed to be connected to heaven and earth. It was frightening to look at. The abyss is rebelling. Kill all rebels. A cold voice rang through the void. Then rumble. A deafening rumble towered into the sky. Terrible energy burst out of the three warships. The aura emanating from each warship turned into a figure that blotted out the sky. The three figures stood high in the sky, looking down at the great judge below. So what if there are three great sages? We'll kill them all the same. The great judge burst out laughing. His hair fluttered in the wind. Suddenly, a blood-colored sword appeared in his hand. His aura also soared into the sky. A huge blood-colored figure blotted out the sky in the abyss camp. The shadows of the four great sages collided in the void. The explosion of the lotus slowly faded away. Amidst the mushroom cloud, a broken figure floated in midair, dripping with blood. The sound of heavy breathing filled the air. The wings behind Xiao Bai flapped as he flew to Bufang's side. His blood-red eyes flashed with brilliance. The next moment, he raised the war god stick and tore it apart. With a boom, it pierced the broken figure and nailed him to the city wall. The whole wall was sunken into a deep pit. Bufang's face was cold. He grabbed a teapot and poured tea into his mouth. The sweet tea entered his mouth. The second one, Bufang said faintly. Suddenly, Bufang's pupils constricted. A boom rang out. Before Xiao Bai could react, his body was blown away. His body was broken in an instant. Broken pieces of steel kept flying in the air, rolling in the void. With a sonic boom, they shot back and smashed the ground under Bufang's feet, creating a deep pit. Chapter 12:16. Swoosh. Even a void seemed to be collapsing from the pressure. In Bu Fong's eyes, Xiao Bai's body was sent flying backward. With a loud boom, he fell on the ground, causing the ground to cave in. Clang! A pile of broken steel debris fell in front of Bu Fong. Bu Fong's eyes shrank. He stopped drinking the 9 Revolutions Heavenly Path tea. Lowering his head, he looked at Xiao Bai. In the distance, Xiao Bai was smashed hard on the ground. His body was covered with fine cracks, which made him look like a porcelain doll. This was the first time Xiao Bai had been hurt so badly. Bu Fong had never seen Xiao Bai get hurt like this. Bu Fong took a deep breath. His body landed next to Xiao Bai. Looking at the flickering light in Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes, a murderous aura emerged in his eyes. A wave of anger gushed out from Bu Fong's body. This was the first time Bu Fong was so angry. Since Xiao Bai came to this world, he had been following Bu Fong. He was one of Bu Fong's closest friends. Seeing Xiao Bai get hurt so badly, Bu Fong's anger burst out uncontrollably. Clatter, clatter. Bu Fong suddenly lifted his head, looking in that direction. There, a figure slowly appeared. It was a young man with a pair of wings on his back. At the tips of the wings were sharp claws. His upper body was naked, and his body was covered with strange patterns. Boom! That person slowly strode forward. Every step he took caused the ground to tremble. Swish! The sound of blood dripping on the ground echoed. The young man's hair fluttered, and his face was as cold as a knife. He held the war God's stick in his hand. His eyes were indifferent. Where did you come from? How dare you kill a judge of Abyss City? A cold voice filled the air as a terrifying wave of energy rippled out. In Bu Fong's eyes, the pressure from the young man's body was like a world pressing down on them, causing the rocks on the ground to roll. It was as if a huge demon had opened its mouth wide and was roaring at him. That young man was like a god. The young man's eyes were dark gold, and his hair was blood red. He looked rough and fierce. He seemed to have sensed Bu Fong's gaze. He slightly raised his chin and looked at Bu Fong from the corner of his eyes. There was an emotionless coldness in his eyes. He also saw Xiao Bai beside Bu Fong. This puppet is yours, isn't it? Does that mean you're the one who killed the judge of Abyss City? The young man said calmly. As he spoke, black gas seemed to spurt out of his mouth. Its pointy ears twitched. He raised the war god stick. He exerted force in his palm. As Bu Fong's pupils constricted, the war god stick was slowly bent by his grip. Finally, crack. A loud noise rang out. The war god stick was broken. Boom. Countless lightning bolts danced on the stick as if thunder and fire were about to burst out. The material is not bad. Unfortunately, it's a little brittle. The young man said calmly, his words full of disdain and ridicule. As soon as he finished speaking, the young man loosened his palm. Immediately, the remains of the war god's stick fell to the ground, making a clanking sound. Sizzle. The next moment, the war god's stick on the ground turned into lightning bolts and disappeared. Who are you? Bu Fong asked coldly, his voice filled with uncontrollable anger. You killed a judge of Abyss City, but you don't know who I am? The young man looked at Bu Fong strangely, as if he was very surprised. He stared at Bu Fong and grinned. With a half-step Saint cultivation base, you can actually injure a judge of Abyss City's second-stage profession. It seems you have some tricks. Bu Fong exhaled gently. He put away the teapot. System, how is Xiao Bai's condition? Bu Fong asked the system calmly. Scanning started. Scanning ended. Xiao Bai has suffered the most serious injuries so far. He was crushed by brute force far beyond his realm. 90% of his body was injured. The system's serious voice echoed in Bu Fong's mind. 90% of his body was injured. Bu Fong's eyes turned red instantly. That cute and obedient Xiao Bai. He was F*King crippled with one blow. F*CKU, even someone as calm as Bu Fong. At this moment, the rage in his heart instantly overwhelmed his mind, and he instantly cursed. Boom! Bu Fong's spirit sea erupted instantly. The divine wolf phantom hovering above the spirit sea seemed to open its eyes, bursting with golden light. Dragon roars, tiger roars, bird cries, and turtle roars rang out at the same time. Bufong stood up and looked coldly at the winged young man. He didn't say anything. A moment later, Xiaopi landed at Bufong's feet. Swish! Xiaopi suddenly burst with thousands of dazzling lights. It tore the void, turned into a beam of golden light, and appeared in front of the winged young man. The young man's blood-red hair fluttered as he looked at Bufong indifferently. The young man was surprised. A moment later, the seven-color divine seal, dumpling, suddenly enlarged in front of the young man's eyes. A dumpling? Are you a chef? The young man grinned. He didn't put Bufong in his eyes at all. Indeed, a mere half-step Saint Realm expert was like an ant in his eyes. A chef also has a temper, Bufong said coldly. Then he coldly spat out a word. Explode. Boom. In an instant, a dazzling brilliance shocked the heavens and suddenly exploded. White light filled the air in an instant. The blood-haired young man's eyes suddenly shrank, as if he couldn't believe it. The young man's blood-red energy filled the air. He looked at his body. He could see an invisible force spreading from Baiguang. It was like an invisible array sealing his body. That array was formed by the condensation of fragrance. After it covered his body, it began to glow. For a moment, he couldn't move. What kind of trick is this? Even the knowledgeable young man couldn't help but be shocked at this moment. After all, his body was sealed and he couldn't move. Anyone would feel scared. Boom! The blood in the young man's body suddenly roared. Like a raging wave, he suddenly hit the stone wall. The power that sealed his body collapsed in an instant. Surging qi and blood once again surged over his body. This made the young man breathe a sigh of relief. Bufong saw the young man regain control of his body in an instant. His eyes shrank. One breath. No, not even half a breath. The divine seal, dumpling, couldn't seal this young man for half a breath. What did this mean? This meant that this young man's strength had reached the great sage realm, and he wasn't weak in the great sage realm. However, Bufong gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with anger again. Thinking of Xiao Bai's 90% injury, Bufong couldn't suppress his anger. He calmed down. A flash of silver light suddenly erupted from his hand. He flicked his finger. It suddenly tore apart. The silver light shot toward the young man like a meteor. So powerful? The young man's eyes focused, and he took a deep breath. This human, who was just a half-step Saint Realm expert, gave him a feeling of disbelief again and again. Whether it was the divine seal dumpling that sealed his body's power or the silver dried pot, all of these gave him a very strange feeling. The young man raised his arm. His arm was full of bulging muscles, and blood-colored energy spread across it. Soon, the blood-colored energy wrapped around the perishing pot. Boom! The perishing pot exploded. A terrible explosive force burst out. It's a combination of the will of the Great Path and a mysterious array. Unstable energy fluctuation, the young man analyzed. Then, the blood-colored energy suddenly surged. In the blink of an eye, it suppressed the power of the perishing pot. All right, I don't have time to waste on you. Although it's a little magical, you're just a half-step Saint Realm expert, the young man said lightly. Then he swung his arm. The blood-colored energy wrapped the perishing pot and shot toward Bufong. Bufong's eyes shrank. Swish! A loud noise rang out. The void seemed to be collapsing. Just for a moment, the young man's face appeared in front of Bufong. He flicked his finger. Then, he flicked it at Bufong's forehead. Clang! The vermilion robe glowed brilliantly. The invincible realm burst out. However, even with the protection of the invincible realm, Bufong still felt a stabbing pain between his eyebrows. His whole body was sent flying backward by the flick of the finger. With a boom, he smashed back around Xiao Bai's body. Xiaopi, who was under his body, let out a cry. He rose to his feet and rubbed the spot between his eyebrows. Suddenly, his pupils shrank. In the distance, the young man swung his arm. The perishing pot, wrapped in blood-colored energy, sped up and shot toward Bufong. If the perishing pot exploded at full force, Bufong didn't think he could withstand it. Bufong's whole body tensed up. Just at that moment, the void in front of Bufong was torn apart. A black dog walked out of it, strutting its cat-like steps. The smell of alcohol on its body seemed to crush the void. As soon as the drunken black dog appeared, squinting its eyes, it stared at the perishing pot, which was wrapped in blood-colored energy, speeding toward it. Lord Go. Lord Go. Bufong's mind focused. He didn't expect that Blackie, who had disappeared for many days, would appear at this moment. No one knew where this mangy dog had gone after stepping into the abyss. Looking at its drunken appearance, it must have gone to cause trouble again. Although Lord Go's eyes were half closed, he still saw the perishing pot galloping toward him. The dog's mouth twitched. The next moment, pitch-black earth prison flame burned on its body. Boom! Flames soared into the sky. The sky seemed to turn into a canopy. With earth prison flame wrapped around Lord Go's body, it opened its mouth. The dog's mouth suddenly widened as if to swallow the world. It seemed to bite through the sky. Suddenly, the perishing pot exploded in the void, turning into a blazing white lotus. As the lotus came crashing down, even the void was distorted. However, it was like a whale swallowing something. The perishing pot was suddenly swallowed by Lord Go. The earth prison flame dissipated. Lord Dog returned to his drunken state once again. He staggered as he walked with his cat-like steps and let out a burp. This dish is a little exciting. Lord Go's dog nose widened, and the smell of alcohol came out of his mouth. In the distance, the moment Lord Go appeared, the red-haired young man's eyes were spewing fire. Damn mangy dog, how dare you show up in front of me? You stole the demon distiller's yeast that I carefully brewed. I will kill you. Lord Go twitched his mouth, as if he didn't care about the young man's angry face. He turned his head and glanced at Bufong, then at Xiao Bai, who was beaten badly and was constantly emitting lightning arcs. His dog eyes narrowed. Bufong boy, that iron lump was beaten to this state by that red-haired birdman? Lord Go's gentle and magnetic voice rang out. Bufong stood up. His vermilion robe was burning like fire, and his whole body was like a flame that soared into the sky. Yes, 5 bowls of sweet in sour dragon ribs. Kill him. Bufong exhaled and said, This guy is a great sage. Lord Go's dog mouth reeked of alcohol as he said, This guy is also the city lord of Abyss City. 10 bowls of sweet and sour dragon ribs, Bufong said. Lord Go stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. I really don't know what to do with you. But this time, Lord Go not only wants sweet and sour dragon ribs, but also a sweet and sour demon ribs. Black Earth Prison Flame emerged on Lord Go's body. It seemed to be seeping out of the void, because this guy is not only the city lord of Abyss City, but also a real, pure-blooded, abyssal demon. As his voice faded, a dog bark shook the sky. Chapter 12:17. The Nether Prison warships hovered in the sky. A terrible aura spread from them, and their pressure shook the sky. The 3 warships were from the 9 Revolution Nether Chefs clan, the Shadow Demon clan, and the Horn Demon clan. The Abyss was under the jurisdiction of the 3 clans, and it had always been regarded as Nether Prison's territory. But now, the Abyss had rebelled, slaughtered Nether Prison's young geniuses, and even killed a Nether Prison great sage. This was unforgivable. It was a provocation to Nether Prison's dignity, a blatant disregard for the faces of the 9 clans, and a complete disregard for them. Therefore, as soon as Nether Prison learned of the news, the 3 clans sent out their warships. These were the warships used by Nether Prison to conquer different realms, and they had been stained with countless people's blood. The Abyss had once wailed beneath this warship. Now, these warships were here again. They were like the nightmares of many creatures in the Abyss. A terrible existence stood at the forefront. There was a terrifying existence standing there. A tremendous and unparalleled aura spread out, as if it was going to cover the sky and collapse the void. He was a great saint, and his eyes shone with a brilliant light. Over his head, The true meaning of the great path churned, as if turning into the vague shape of a world that was about to crush the whole abyss. On each of the three warships stood a great sage. The great sage had descended, and the nether prison seemed to tremble. Roar! The great judge's blood-colored robe flapped noisily. His eyes turned completely blood-red, and his aura towered into the sky. He held a blood-colored demonic sword in his hand as he soared into the sky and hovered there. Blood and energy surged. Blood chi surged above his head, as if it had transformed into a churning layer of clouds. Similarly, a small, indistinct world appeared. It was filled with mountains of corpses and seas of blood, filled with the aura of death. The great judge was also a great sage. Old nether prison dogs, I killed the great sage in front of us. Kill me if you dare. You old nether prison dogs have committed all the crimes against the abyss, and I'm going to pay you back one by one. I'll teach you a lesson in blood. The great judge's face was cold and ferocious, and his eyes suddenly turned dark gold. The aura on his body soared into the sky, and the huge phantom image also soared into the sky. The coercion collided with the coercion of the three great sages fearlessly. How dare you? Traitors will be killed without mercy. The warship rumbled incessantly. In the blink of an eye, the three great sage charged out of the battleship. He unleashed a terrifying amount of energy and threw out three palms. The terrifying aura transformed into three huge palms that blotted out the sky and slapped toward the great judge. It was as if the entire abyss was going to be destroyed. Tear! The great judge bellowed. The blood-colored demonic sword was suddenly raised, and instantly, sword light soared into the sky. His whole body seemed to have turned into a sword light, soaring into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the three great sages began to fight. The more they fought, the braver they became. They actually fought their way up to the 9 heavens. In the void, there is only the sound of the roar that resounded endlessly. Boom! The four great sage kept attacking with their ultimate techniques. The four blurry little worlds seemed to be colliding with each other. A terrifying pressure spread out, and heaven and earth seemed to be extinguished. Boom! Boom! The four rushed out of the boundless void turbulence and fought their way into the starry sky. The stars in the sky swirled and streaked across the sky. The experts of the great sage could walk in the starry sky. Naturally, they could also fight in the starry sky. They used their ultimate techniques and kept bombarding the sky. The boundless starry sky was majestic and boundless, stretching as far as the eye could see. The four great sage were as small as ants under the starry sky, but they were all blooming with extreme brilliance. The brilliance of billions of stars was endless. Boom, boom, boom. In the Great War of the Stars, every great sage had their own trump cards. The great sage, on the other hand, rushed into the void. The battle in the boundless void turbulence was about to break out at any moment. Boom! In the nether prison warship, figures rushed out one after another, and a terrifying aura filled the air. More than a dozen little saints charged out at the same time. Above each little saint's head was a roaring dragon formed by the will of the great path. On the other side of the abyss, two judges were wrapped in blood-colored robes. They held blood-colored scythes, their eyes cold. The next moment, they let out a long roar. Then law enforcers roared and rushed out, fighting with the nether prison experts. Boom! The tide-like energy crashed into each other and suddenly splashed out, causing rumbling sounds to ring out. The little saints sat in the void and collided with each other. They used all kinds of ultimate techniques. Huge energy hands filled the sky, and surging knife energy cut through everything. The shadows of giant beasts rammed into everything. The little saints of the three nether prison clans showed their great power. The battle instantly entered a white-hot stage. Puff, puff. In the void, as the battle continued, there were experts falling one after another. They turned into a blood mist and exploded in the void. The experts who exploded fell into the boundless void one after another. The Abyss clan was naturally no match for the three Nether Prison clans. They were forced to retreat. Soon, they retreated outside Abyss City. The city gate was stained with blood. A rich blood energy soared into the sky as if to contaminate everything. Kill. The more the Nether Prison experts killed, the stronger they became. The Shadow Demon clan could turn into thousands of shadows, each of which could burst out with mighty energy. Their skills were quite magical. Puff, puff. Ants of the Abyss. The price of rebellion is destruction. The Nether Prison experts sneered. They didn't understand where the Abyss got the courage to resist the Nether Prison. The Nether Prison's power completely crushed the Abyss. Even though the Nether Prison was troubled by both internal and external troubles, it was not something a small Abyss could afford to offend. Boom, boom. One by one, little saints rushed to the outside of Abyss City. The terrible pressure caused the whole city to sway in the wind and rain. The two judges were also stained with blood, and their eyes were full of excitement. Although they were forced to retreat again and again, when they saw the blood-soaked ground, a sinister grin appeared on their faces. The Abyss is not something you can underestimate. One of the judges growled. The next moment, he pressed a palm on the ground. A little saint, who was leading the Nether Prison 4th Revolution team, narrowed his eyes and charged over. However, he was intercepted by the judge, who was also a 3 Revolution little saint. Although the judge was crushed, he was just trying to buy time. Boom! Outside Abyss City, the ground suddenly trembled. The blood on the ground seemed to boil and wriggle slowly. Suddenly, a blood-colored array emerged. As soon as it appeared, the expression of every Nether Prison expert changed. In the boundless starry sky, the expressions of the 3 great sage experts, who were crushing the great judge, flickered. Damn it! How dare you? The face of one of the great sage turned unsightly. The fluctuation emanating from the ground reminded them of a legend in the Abyss. The great judge laughed wildly, his face cold. It's too late to stop them. The great judge's body flickered as he transformed into a blood-colored sword that tore through the boundless void. He charged toward the 3 great sage experts. He wanted to do his best to hold the 3 great sage experts back. When the city lord made a move, they would be able to kill the 3 great sage experts. When the plan was ready, they would have the confidence to fight back against Nether Prison. Even if they couldn't fight back against Nether Prison, with Nether Prison's current situation of internal and external troubles, they had no time to worry about the Abyss. The Abyss would truly be out of Nether Prison's control. Rumble. The blood-colored array spun. Suddenly, a terrible roar rang out from it. The expressions of the Nether Prison experts changed abruptly. The next moment, inside the array, a claw covered in scales stretched out and instantly tore through the void. Then, it grabbed a Nether Prison little saint. Roar! A bestial roar shook the sky. The little saint tried to struggle, but he was suddenly dragged into the array by the savage beast. Apart from the roar of the savage beast, at the same time, a series of terrifying and sharp laughter resounded. Boom! 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 They shot out like cannonballs. Then, one abyssal demon, after another with pitch-black skin and a pair of wings on his back, rushed out. The ground suddenly cracked, and so did the walls of the Abyss City. A behemoth crawled out of the array. Pitch-black demonic energy spread as if it was looking down on everything. His eyes were burning like flames. It had a dragon head, antlers, lion eyes, a stocky back, and snake scales. A terrible pressure spread in all directions. The tremendous pressure made the legs of the Nether Prison experts tremble. The experts of the Abyss, on the other hand, were extremely excited and roared wildly. The Dark Chelan. It was a living Dark Chelan. It was a savage beast from the Abyss. The Dark Chelan, who was once sealed by the top Nether Prison Great Sage, had finally broken free. It was not just the Dark Chelan. There were also many ferocious abyssal demons. The main force of the Abyss had finally appeared. As soon as these forces appeared, the situation in the Abyss was reversed. The nether prison forces were forced to retreat in an instant. Roar! The dark Chelan was a pseudo-divine beast with incomparable strength. It rushed into the enemy's camp and carried out a massacre. Countless nether prison experts turned into blood mists and shattered in the void. The blood stimulated the dark Chelan, making it even more excited. Boom! 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 Bufong stared at the sky. Two figures rushed at high speed, colliding with each other like black lines. From the ground, in just a flash, they fought their way up into the sky. It was the battle between the Lord of Abyss City and the Lord Go. The Lord Go seemed to be drunk, and his fat was jiggling. He kept slapping the Lord of Abyss City's face with his exquisite dog paw. The latter was furious. He flapped his wings and kept fighting back. However, in Bufong's eyes, the Lord Go seemed to have a great advantage, completely crushing the Lord of Abyss City. The two kept fighting their way up into the sky. Bufong exhaled softly. When the Lord Go made his paw, Bufong no longer paid attention to it. Instead, he walked in front of Xiao Bai. Lightning arcs were flickering on Xiao Bai's body. Apparently, he was seriously injured. Bufong's mind flickered. He put Xiao Bai back into the system storage space. System, can Xiao Bai be repaired? Bufong asked with a heavy heart. The system was silent for a while, as if it was calculating. Then, a solemn and earnest voice rang out. Yes, but it will take time. Also, the host needs to get the puppet heart of at least a 3-revolution sacred nether puppet to repair Xiao. The puppet heart of a sacred nether puppet? Bufong was slightly taken aback. What was that? It seemed to be a new term. However, if he could repair Xiao Bai, Bufong had to give it a try. The sacred nether puppet is the puppet of the Nether Puppeteer clan, which ranks second among the 9 clans in Nether Prison. The system explained. Bufong furrowed his brows. The Nether Puppeteer clan, which was ranked second among the 9 clans in Nether Prison. The system was up to something. Frowning, Bufong took a deep breath. After a long time, he relaxed his grip. So what if it was a sacred nether puppet? In order to repair Xiao Bai, Bufong had to make a trip. But before that, Bufong felt that he needed to complete the task first. Of the 4 judges, he had killed 2 of them, and there were only 2 left. There were also 2 of the more difficult ones to deal with. There was still a tough battle ahead. Bufong stopped talking. With a thought, he took out spicy strips and stuffed them into his mouth. He came to the city wall. He cut the chains and put Mengqi and Luya down. After that, he put the Netherworld ship and Mengqi into the heaven and earth farmland. As for Luya, Bufong didn't bother to pay attention to him. However, the latter thanked Bufong for saving his life. After bowing to Bufong, he left. Rumble. Just as Bufong put Mengqi and the Netherworld ship into the heaven and earth farmland, in the distance, a terrible explosion suddenly rang out. There seemed to be a deafening roar of a beast resounding through the air. A terrible pressure spread, causing Bufong to slightly narrow his eyes. Bam! In the sky, Lord Go turned into a roaring earth prison hound, his body burning with pitch-black earth prison fire. He slapped the Lord of Abyss City in the face and pushed him out of the city. Bufong put Shrimpy away. The little fellow was exhausted. The little guy was tired, so he touched Little Who's head. The ground under Bufong's feet exploded. His figure shot out, speeding out of the Abyss City. The more chaotic it was, the better. The more chaotic it was, the more opportunities Bufong had to fish in troubled waters. The more opportunities he had to kill the 2 judges. Chapter 12:18. The Dark Chelan was like a world-destroying behemoth. The appearance of such a terrifying pseudo-divine beast was a disaster for the Nether Prison experts. None of them could resist the Dark Chelan's attack. Chelans were auspicious signs and divine beasts. However, they were a variant of Chelan, a pseudo-divine beast that represented death and slaughter. Like the abyssal demons, they lived in the abyss and were the representative experts of the abyss. When Nether Prison invaded the abyss and slaughtered abyssal demons, its top expert, the Great Sage, exiled the Dark Chelan. Without the protection of the Dark Chelan and many abyssal demons, The abyss was like a turtle without its shell, unable to resist Nether Prison's invasion. In the end, the whole abyss became a vassal of Nether Prison. Now, the great judge and the lord of Abyss City had been plotting for a long time. They found the array that had been covered in dust for a long time, found the array that exiled the Dark Chelan, and used it to summon it back. This was the reason why they dared to face Nether Prison. The great judge was the manager of the law enforcers. He was naturally unwilling to be mediocre and to let the whole abyss be under Nether Prison's jurisdiction. In the past, the abyss had suffered a great loss and had not recovered. But now, the great sage was presiding over the abyss. It was strong enough to resist Nether Prison. Moreover, Nether Prison was suffering from internal and external troubles. The turmoil in the forbidden lands of Nether Prison posed a constant threat to the 9 clans. Outside Nether Prison, powerful forces were eyeing them covetously. Earth Prison under the Netherworld had long been ready to make a move. Nether Prison had dominated this part of the world for so long, and had long wanted to rise up and fight back. When Earth Prison's old Hades Tenzing led his men to attack Earth Prison, it was a wake-up call. Then, they ruthlessly suppressed Earth Prison. But now, under the internal and external troubles, their suppression had weakened, and various forces were rising to resist. The Abyss took this opportunity to break free from Nether Prison's control and regain its freedom. Once the abyssal demons regained their freedom, they could plunder the surrounding plains and small worlds to obtain more resources to strengthen themselves. At that time, even if the 9 clans of Nether Prison condemned them at the same time, the Abyss would have the capital to fight back. Boom! The Dark Chelan let out a long roar as terrifying energy waves burst out from its mouth. One by one, Nether Prison experts were torn apart and killed under the terrifying attacks of the Dark Chelan. The Nether Prison army retreated step by step. The Dark Chelan's black scales radiated an awe-inspiring aura. Its dark golden, lantern-like eyes locked onto the warship in the sky. The next moment, its hooves stomped on the ground. The ground trembled. The Dark Chelan soared into the sky. He stepped on the void, and the sound of his hooves shook the sky. There was a loud bang. His head smashed hard against the warship. The huge Nether Prison battleship, hovering in midair, was knocked to the side by the impact. The Dark Chelan's body was massive. Even though it wasn't as big as the warship, it still looked like a small mountain. The warship was blasted to pieces. Flames emerged from the warships, and experts leaped out of the warships in an attempt to escape. There was a tearing noise. The sound of something tearing through the air resounded. One after another, the abyssal demons flapped their fleshy wings and flew over. Poochie, Poochie, in the void. Blood splattered in the sky. The bodies of the Nether Prison experts were torn to pieces by the abyssal demons, turning into a vigorous mist of blood that dissipated in the void. For a moment, the scene was a brutal massacre. The remaining 2 warships had already begun to slowly retreat. The appearance of the Dark Chelan made the Nether Prison experts realize that the situation was hopeless. Unless the 3 great sages in charge could return and save the situation, they would not be able to do so. However, the 3 great sages were fighting the great judge in the boundless starry sky. Boom! All of a sudden, from Abyss City, the sound of an explosion rang out. A black pot burning with black earth prison flame pressed its paw on the face of a young man and kept flying out. There was a loud bang. The young man was pressed to the ground, and the black dog continued to move forward, causing the ground to crack. A terrifying pressure spread out, causing many people to involuntarily pay attention to it. Boom! The Dark Chelan landed. It opened its mouth and let out a roar. The roar was deafening, surging into the sky, and its target was the Lord Go, who was pressing down on the Lord of Abyss City. At this moment, the Lord Go's body was tall, and its black fur was extremely soft. The black earth prison flame was burning, and its eyes were crimson. It seemed to have heard the Dark Chelan's roar. The Lord Go jerked its head up and looked at the Dark Chelan. It opened its mouth and barked. The dog's bark seemed to cause the mountains to collapse and the earth to crack. It shook the sky. The dark Qilin suddenly felt a terrible pressure coming toward it. Then it took a step back and lay on the ground, not daring to move. Boom! The Lord of Abyss City was furious. Suddenly, a towering aura burst out of its body. All of a sudden, Lord Dog leaped up. The next moment, the appearance of the Lord of Abyss City began to change. It became more and more terrifying and ferocious. Its sharp voice soared into the sky as if to shatter the world. With a boom, it shot up and fell like a cannonball, landing on the dark Qilin's head. The Lord of Abyss City's eyes shone like torches. Its dark golden eyes were fixed on the Lord Go. Then, it raised its head and glanced at the flickering starry sky. Dark Qilin, hold this black dog for me first. When I return, we will kill it together. The Lord of Abyss City said coldly. He patted the dark Qilin's head. The next moment, the wings on its back flapped. His whole body turned into a stream of black light and rushed into the starry sky. There, the three Nether Prison Great Sage and the Great Judge were fighting. After all, the Great Judge was alone, and his cultivation base was not much stronger than the three Nether Prison Great Sages. At this moment, after a few fierce battles, his body was already stained with blood, and his saint blood was sprinkling in the sky. The small world above his head seemed to be on the verge of collapse. His whole body had almost reached its limit. However, with a whistling sound, the Lord of Abyss City roared and rushed up from the ground, joining the battle. In an instant, the situation had turned into a one-sided battle. The Lord of Abyss City was not an ordinary great sage. As soon as he joined the battle, how could the three Nether Prison Great Sages stop him? They were defeated almost instantly. Their saint blood sprinkled in the void. A great sage was torn to pieces by the Lord of Abyss City and died on the spot. Even his soul had been crushed and collapsed. As for the remaining two little saints, one was wounded and fled, while the other was suppressed by the Lord of Abyss City under the starry sky, with chains constantly piercing through his body. Just like that, the battle of the great sage seemed to have come to an end. Bufong walked out of Abyss City. The fierce battle scene made him suck in a cold breath. This kind of battle was very terrible. The weakest of the two sides were true immortals. This kind of battle was simply unimaginable in the past. What surprised him the most was that the Abyss seemed to have the upper hand. Looking at the Nether Prison experts being stained with blood, Bufong's face grew serious. Of course, he didn't pay too much attention to it. His eyes passed through the crowd and finally locked on the blood-robed judges, who were hovering in midair and supporting two arrays. His targets were these two. He forced you to unleash the curse and put her in a very weak state. He forced Bufong into a very sorry state. Bufong would never forget this grudge. Bufong would never forget the oath he made. He had said he would kill the four judges, so he would fulfill it. Bufong didn't have a good impression of the Abyss. You were injured, Xiaobai was injured, and so was Bufong. These were all related to the Abyss, so Bufong naturally didn't have a good impression of it. Boom! The two judges seemed to be controlling the arrays, and two abyssal demons were guarding them. Bufong narrowed his eyes. The next moment, he began to run at full speed. His vermilion robe fluttered, and he sped away. Bufong's heart skipped a beat. Immediately, he released his divine will, covering the whole area. With a flip of his hand, a stream of silver light appeared in his hand. In his mind, golden explosive meatballs shot out and hovered around Bufong. Bufong's eyes shone like torches. He dodged one enemy after another. His body turned into a beam of golden light as he sped toward the two judges. Blood-colored light soared into the sky from the two judges. The power in their bodies constantly flowed into the formation, supporting it. Inside the arrays, abyssal demons kept flapping their wings and flying out. It seemed to have sensed danger approaching. The pupils of the two judges constricted. Then, they turned to look in Bufong's direction. Above the yellow sand, a young man with a silver lotus in his hand was flying toward them at full speed. His sharp and indifferent gaze caused their bodies to involuntarily be enveloped in a layer of chill. That familiar look. It was the same look he had when he was swallowed by the turbulence in the void. It was a terrifying will that seemed to penetrate their souls. That young man is not dead yet. The two judges were shocked. The next moment, their expressions changed dramatically. Was Blood for, who guarded the Abyss City and intercepted this young man, also dead? Was he killed by this young man? The two judges looked at each other, and then their eyes flashed with hostility. How dare this young man kill two of our brothers? The anger of the two judges skyrocketed. However, in their current state, they could not move. However, they were not worried at all. Abyssal demons, intercept and tear this young man to pieces. With a thought, the faces of the two judges contorted. Their roars shook the sky. Two ferocious-looking abyssal demons flapped their wings and stood in front of the two judges. Their dark golden eyes were fixed on Bufong. Their wings flapped. Then, they shot toward Bufong, their killing intent sword. They wanted to tear Bufong's limbs to pieces. This was how abyssal demons like to torture humans. A bird's cry rang out. The flaming wings on Bufong's back appeared. As they spread and flapped, his body shot out like a beam of fire. Facing the two abyssal demons, he did not move at all. The demons' faces grew larger and larger in front of him. The next moment, Bufong's eyes narrowed. Lord, go. Kill these two abyssal demons, and I'll give you a bowl of sweet and sour demon ribs. Bufong said. As soon as his voice rang out, it soared into the sky, burning with earth prison flames. Lord Go pressed the huge, dark Qilin to the ground with his paw. Suddenly, he straightened his neck. He looked over, then grinned, and earth prison flames sprayed out of his mouth. Deal! Even from afar, Lord Go's heart would jump at the mention of sweet and sour demon ribs. So what if he killed two demons? As soon as he finished speaking, Lord Go waved his paw in Bufong's direction. Instantly, the sky was filled with pitch-black earth prison flames. Finally, they turned into a pitch-black dog paw, streaking across the sky. Wherever it passed, the void collapsed. Bufong's expression did not change. His body continued to shoot forward like an arrow. The two abyssals grinned, revealing fiendish grins, but in the next moment, their grins came to an abrupt halt, because a pitch-black flaming dog paw fell from the sky. The two demons did not even have time to react before they were smashed into pieces. The earth prison flames burned. All the pieces were burned to ashes. For the sake of the sweet and sour demon ribs, Lord Go did not hold back at all. The two demons who blocked his way were killed by Lord Go with one paw. Bufong's figure shot out like an arrow, his expression unchanged. The pupils of the two judges had already constricted. Looking at the monstrous earth prison flames, they took a deep breath. Suddenly, they had a bad feeling in their hearts. Inside the earth prison flames, a mass of crimson light surged. A flash of silver light, dazzling and dazzling. It streaked across the sky like a shooting star. The next moment, the young man's face enlarged in front of their eyes. The familiar face caused their hearts to suddenly tremble. Bufong let out a long roar. His eyes were cold and ruthless. 7 explosive meatballs turned into golden beams of light and fell into the dried pot. Instantly, the silver-dried pot emitted an unparalleled restless force. Bufong's hand, which was holding the dried pot, seemed to be unable to control it. I told you, I will definitely kill the 4 of you. Now, there are only 2 of you left. Bufong stared at the 2 judges and said. Then, he threw out his hand. The perishing pot mixed with the explosive meatballs shot out at high speed. The restless energy left a trail of silver and gold light in its wake as it shot straight into the void. In the eyes of the 2 judges, it suddenly exploded. Chapter 12:19. How powerful was a perishing pot stuffed with 7 explosive meatballs? At the very least, it was much more powerful than the original perishing pot. The principle of the perishing pot was to use the collision of unstable energy to produce a terrible explosion to destroy. Coupled with the violent energy of the explosive meatballs, The energy of the perishing pot was like a fuse, which was completely ignited. The explosive energy became stronger and stronger. Of course, this kind of growth was not too ridiculous. The original perishing pot could only kill a 2-revolution little saint at most. For a 3rd revolution little saint, he would only be seriously injured at most, and it would be very difficult to kill him. However, the perishing pot stuffed with 7 explosive meatballs should be even more powerful. It would not be a problem for it to kill a 3rd revolution little saint, and it would even have a chance to kill a 4th revolution little saint. Since stuffing explosive meatballs into the perishing pot could enhance its power, why didn't Bufong stuff a few more into it? In that case, wouldn't the power of the perishing pot be even more terrifying? Of course, there was a limit to this. The perishing pot could only hold 7 explosive meatballs at most, and if it stuffed too many of them, it would explode instantly. It was very easy for the perishing pot to explode in an instant. In that case, Bufong might be killed before the perishing pot could kill the enemy. If that happened, it would be the biggest joke in the world. The perishing pot suddenly exploded. The violent energy rumbled in an instant. It turned into a violent sea of fire that swept across and engulfed the 2 judges in an instant. Boom! A loud explosion rang out. The 2 judges howled miserably. They were indeed howling miserably. There was no way for them to avoid Bufong's perishing pot. They needed to control the array. They had planned to let the 2 little Saint Realm abyssal demons stop Bufong or kill Bufong. But who would have thought? The dog paw fell from the sky. It turned the 2 little Saint Realm abyssal demons into ashes. This was a killing that didn't give them any face. Without the obstruction of the 2 abyssal demons, Bufong's perishing pot came unimpeded, appeared in front of them, and exploded. The instant explosion erupted, they were simply unable to dodge and were engulfed by the sea of flames. Boom! The formation trembled for a while before finally shattering with a loud bang. There was a cracking sound. At this moment, the rotating blood-colored formation shattered like glass. The 2 judges howled miserably as flames spread across their bodies. A mushroom cloud soared into the sky. It was incomparably shocking. In the next moment, waves of air blasted out. Bufong stood still, his chest heaving violently. This was the most powerful move he could execute so far. It was only because he had seized the opportunity that he had the chance to blast it out. Victory or defeat would be decided in this moment. Bufong's eyes were fixed on the fire. A sea of fire surged incessantly. The next moment, the sea of fire suddenly exploded. A figure rushed out of it. The figure was covered in flames, and his eyes were full of murderous intent. He stared at Bufong and let out a roar. In a flash, the man on fire drew an arc in the air and sped toward Bufong. He wanted to tear Bufong to pieces. However, just as the man on fire was approaching, Little Hu, who had been lying on Bufong's shoulder, dashed out and hovered in front of Bufong. Her 4 small and exquisite claws kept waving in the air. Then she opened her fox mouth wide. Waves of mysterious fluctuations gathered in her fox's mouth. The next moment, a dazzling golden light shone. Boom, 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 boom. Golden energy shells shot out of her mouth, tearing through the air and mercilessly bombarding the man on fire with bursts of sonic booms. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions rang out again and again, and the man on fire was swallowed up by the flames. There was a series of explosions. Little Hu closed her mouth and burped. Green smoke came out her mouth. After the bombardment, Little Hu's 2 fox tails swayed in the air. Then, she dashed out like a stream of light, scurried to Bufong's shoulder, and lay there quietly. Bufong stood still, his vermilion robe fluttering in the wind. He looked indifferently at the man on fire in the distance. The smoke and dust dispersed. The man on fire stared at Bufong, unwilling to give up. The next moment, he fell to the ground with a crash, kicking up a cloud of dust. The surroundings seemed to be a little quiet. Many experts of the abyss watched in disbelief. The array was destroyed, and 2 judges were killed by a young man. For a moment, This situation made them a little confused. Soon, these people came to their senses. The next moment, they crazily shot toward Bufang. One by one, the abyssal demons opened their mouths and let out sharp roars. Their roars were deafening. They tore through the void and swooped toward Bufang. Bufang glanced around indifferently. In his mind, Bufang retracted his divine will. He felt weak all over. Obviously, using the perishing pot had consumed a lot of his energy. However, he was satisfied with the result. A perishing pot stuffed with 7 explosive meatballs had blown the two little saints to death. This was Bufang's highest achievement so far. Of course, it was a little opportunistic, but luck was also a part of one's strength. Bufang exhaled softly. Bufang raised his hand and touched little Hu, who seemed a little tired. His mind flickered. In just a flash, his figure disappeared from where he stood. Boom! The abyssal demons poured over, and their attacks bombarded the ground. The whole ground was instantly devoured by countless energies, cracking and filling the sky with yellow sand. An incomparably huge and deep pit appeared on the spot. However, the young man was nowhere to be seen. It seemed that he had been turned into ashes. In the void, Lord Go pressed his paw on the dark Chilin's head. The latter's entire head lay on the ground, unable to move. Lord Go grinned, and the smell of alcohol gushed out of his mouth. He gave the dark Chilin one last look, then swung his paw. Puff! Dark blood spurted out. The dark Chilin roared in pain. His aura suddenly rose and became incomparably violent. One of the dark Chilin's legs was broken by Lord Go's paw. Lord Go grabbed the Chilin's hoof and fled into the void. Striding with his enchanting cat-like steps, he twisted his dog, butt, and disappeared. Bufang Kid ran away after killing the abyssal demons. There was no point for Lord Go to stay here. He had played with this fool for so long, so it wasn't a loss for him to leave after collecting the interest. In the void, in the boundless starry sky, the clanking of the blood-colored chains rang out. Then a nether prison great sage was covered in blood, his hair fluttering in the wind. His body was pierced by the chains and could not move. The great judge grabbed the chains. The Lord of Abyss City changed back into his human form, his eyes filled with ferocity. "We've won this battle. Let's go back," he said. The city lord said. Covered in blood, the great judge grinned. After this battle, Nether Prison would no longer be able to look down on the Abyss, and it might not send an army here in a short time. The main reason was that Nether Prison did not have the time and energy to do so. Meanwhile, the Abyss could take advantage of this period of time to develop. As long as all the exiled abyssal demons returned through the array, the Abyss's strength would rise to another level. Holding the chains, the great judge followed the city lord and left the starry sky. Fighting in the starry sky consumed a lot of energy for a great sage. Although the great sage could walk in the starry sky, it cost him his own energy. There was no energy supply in the starry sky. Once his energy was exhausted, even the great sage would be completely devoured by the energy in the starry sky. With a nether prison great sage in their hands, the two of them returned to Abyss City. They looked at Abyss City from the distant sky. Their pupils constricted abruptly. Roars rang out incessantly in the abyss. The ground was full of potholes, and the smell of blood permeated the air. Most importantly, the blood-colored array had shattered and disappeared. Where's the array? Why is it gone? Where are Blood 1 and Blood 2? The great judge's pupils constricted, and then he quickly landed in front of Abyss City. Rumble. The wreckage of the Nether Prison battleship smashed to the ground and shattered. The heads of the Nether Prison experts were mercilessly torn to pieces by the abyssal demons who suddenly shot over. These demons had been exiled for too long, and their bodies were filled with ferocity. Naturally, they showed no mercy to the Nether Prison experts who banished them. The Nether Prison experts were all wiped out, and countless were killed or wounded. One great sage escaped, and 2 battleships retreated. There were only a few Nether Prison experts left in the 2 battleships. The crusade against the abyss was a complete failure. The nether prison's face was mercilessly beaten by the abyss. However, in front of Abyss City, the Lord of Abyss City and the Great Judge were not very happy. The array was destroyed. Less than 1/3 of the abyssal demons in the land of exile had returned. They had spent so much effort, but they had only found 1/3 of the abyssal demons. Without the flesh and blood of the nether prison experts, they could not reconstruct the array, and no one knew how long it would take for the rest of the abyssal demons to return. All of this seemed to have been destroyed by a young man. Trash. Blood 1 and Blood 2 are trash. I can't believe they were killed by a human youth. The Great Judge was furious and kept roaring. In the distance, the dark Chelan, with one leg broken, kept struggling and howling, so that no one dared to get within hundreds of miles of it. The Lord of Abyss City was depressed when he saw the dark Chelan's miserable state. One of its legs was torn off by that mangy dog. It was a serious injury to its vitality, and it would take a long time for it to recover. Overall, they did not suffer a loss at the hands of the nether prison this time. Instead, they suffered a great loss at the hands of a dog and a chef. The array was destroyed, and the Chelan was seriously injured. It was all because of those two damn people. Find out where that chef came from. He destroyed my array and hurt my Chelan. Unforgivable. The Lord of Abyss City said coldly, suppressing his anger. His voice spread out in an instant. As for that mangy dog, the Lord of Abyss City felt powerless. He could not beat that dog. What could he do? He was desperate. In the heaven and earth farmland, as soon as Bufong entered the farmland, he sat down on the grass. He was gasping for air. His face had become abnormally pale and bloodless. Little Hu lay on Bufong's shoulder, licked Bufong's face, and rubbed it intimately. In the distance, Nyohan San sped over and appeared in front of Bufong. When he saw Bufong's pale face, he let out a groan. "Owner Bu, how did you end up like this? Come, this old bull will go and find you a good steak. You have to nourish yourself." "You have to nourish yourself," Nyohan San said. Bufong raised his head, glanced at Nyohan San, and twitched the corner of his mouth. "How are you doing?" Bufong breathed a sigh of relief. "Oh, old Nyo was about to tell you that Sister Nethery has woken up. She's in good condition," Nyohan San said. In the distance, in front of the wooden hut, the Netherworld ship was docked there. A pretty figure was sitting on the deck of the ship, swinging her long, white legs. The figure's face was pale, without any color, and her eyes were incomparably dark. Her hair was grayish-green, between black and green. Apparently, the effects of the curse had not been completely suppressed. Bufong and Nyohan San walked over. Bufong saw you from a distance. Bufong exhaled softly when he saw that the latter had woken up. The 4 judges who had forced you to unleash her curse were all killed by Bufong. It could be considered that he had helped you to vent her anger. As for the first killing mission given by the system, he completed it without any mishap. When Bufong came in front of you, their eyes met, and the system's serious voice rang in his head. Chapter 1220. The moment his eyes met Yu's, the system's solemn voice resounded in Bufong's mind. "Congratulations to the host for completing the slaughter mission. The reward will be issued, huh?" The system's words made Bufong's eyes slightly narrow. The slaughter mission was completed? He exhaled softly. Bufong suddenly understood. The 4 judges were all killed by Bufong's perishing pod, and he had completed the system's slaughter mission. When Yu's curse broke out and she fell into a deep slumber, Bufong was enraged, and the system issued a temporary task. Now that the task was completed, the reward would naturally be issued. As soon as he thought of this, Bufong's eyes lit up. Nyohan San, who was standing at the side, seemed to have noticed Bufong's gaze, and he immediately smacked his lips. "Ah, Owner Bu, take your time. This old bull will find you a good steak to nourish yourself." After saying that, Nyohan San tiptoed away. Before leaving, he gave Bufong and Yu a meaningful look. Although Yu's complexion was pale, It didn't affect her appearance in the slightest. She was still so beautiful and peerless. She cast a puzzled look at Nyohan-san. The latter's meaningful gaze made her a little confused and puzzled. She looked at Bufang and saw that Bufang was deep in thought. She didn't interrupt Bufang, and she continued to sit on the Netherworld ship, swinging her long, white legs. She originally thought that the Netherworld ship would disappear, and she didn't expect that when she woke up, the Netherworld ship would be right beside her. This made her very happy. The Netherworld ship was very important to the Netherworld woman, and it could be considered a spiritual sustenance. After all, when she was exiled by the old Hades gave her the Netherworld ship so that she could find some comfort in the boundless and lonely void. The atmosphere instantly turned silent. Mission rewards will be released. One fragment of the God of Cooking set, the cooking method of sword pot, and the qualification to possess an artifact spirit. The system's words were solemn and serious. The conversation ended. Bufang sank into contemplation. This reward could be said to be very generous, but it was normal. After all, the difficulty of this killing mission was really high. If it wasn't for Bufang's good luck, he wouldn't have been able to complete it. He might not be able to complete it. After all, Bufang's current cultivation was only at the half-step saint state, and the massacre mission required him to deal with the 4 little saints. Moreover, there were little saints with different levels of strength. Among them, there were rank 3 and rank 4 little saint. If he used normal methods, Bufang wouldn't be able to do it no matter how hard he tried. Of course, no matter what, Bufang being able to complete the mission was also Bufang's luck. Was it? A ripple spread out. Bufang fell in a deep thought. All of a sudden, a mournful moo resounded, interrupting Bufang's contemplation, causing Bufang to come back to his senses. Bufang's contemplation was interrupted, and he looked around suspiciously. Yu's grayish-green hair fell to her waist, and her big eyes blinked as she stared at Bufang. Bufang gently exhaled. His figure leaped up, landing on the Netherworld ship. His mind flickered. Instantly, a formation appeared on his finger. He stretched out his finger, touching the space between Yu's eyebrows. Buzz, on Yu's body, a pitch-black brilliance emerged. Hiss, a huge dark green cursed snake coiled around Yu's body, spitting out its tongue as it coldly looked at Bufang. Bufang's heart sank. Indeed, even if it was a dish cooked with ingredients with rich vitality, the effect of suppressing the cursed snake had become very weak. The cursed snake seemed to have signs of awakening and breaking out. Does it hurt? Bufang looked at Yu, his face expressionless. Yes. Yu raised her head, looking at Bufang. Her grayish-green hair brushed past her cheeks, and her eyes were flawless as she looked at Bufang. Bufang nodded. In the distance, Nyohan-san ran back, his hand holding a piece of steak overflowing with essence energy. Oh, Owner-boo, old Nyo is back. This steak is absolutely nourishing. Nyohan-san was so excited, wiping the redness from his hands. Bufang received Nyo-Hansen's steak, nodding slightly. He took out the black turtle constellation wok, preparing to cook this steak. Of course, there were many steps in this process. After washing the steak, he had to clean the blood stains and sprinkle all kinds of spices on the steak to marinate it. During this process, miserable, sorrowful, and indignant moos resounded incessantly. Every time, Bufang would raise his head in confusion and look around. It's okay. It's just a daily moan. Owner-boo, you don't need to pay attention to it. Nyohan-san rubbed his hands, smiling. City Lord Minchi was also in the heaven and earth farmland. It was the first time she came to the farmland, and she was very surprised by this world, especially the heaven tree in the center of the farmland. It was a living heaven tree. Although it was only in its infancy, the familiar fluctuation made Mengqi understand that it was the heaven tree of the heaven chief realm. There were all kinds of fields, all kinds of recipes, tea trees, rivers. This world was like an ideal back garden, a place that every chef yearned for even in their dreams. Did this world belong to Bufang? Mengqi kept walking in the heaven and earth farmland, thinking. After a long time, she returned to the wooden house and saw Bufang cooking steak, so she came over. There were many questions in her heart that she hadn't asked, but she didn't ask. She knew that if it weren't for the emergency this time, Bufong wouldn't have brought her to this world. So, she knew clearly what she should ask and what she shouldn't ask. Sizzle, the aroma of meat quickly filled the air. This piece of beef was very big. Bufong cut it into 4 pieces, one for each person. It seemed that Bufong also knew that Mengqi was in the farmland, so he cooked a piece for her. The black turtle constellation wok shook. Instantly, the boiling oil splashed everywhere. The 4 pieces of steak in the wok flew up at the same time, spinning in the air and shaking the oil. The aroma burst out. After spinning a few times in the air, the steak fell back into the black turtle constellation wok with a splash. The tender beef on the wok was shaking unceasingly. Owner Bu's cooking skills are always so pleasing to the eye. Nyo Han-san watched from a distance, fascinated. Of course, he was more interested in the meat aroma in the air. You sat on the netherworld ship, swinging her fair legs. Her eyes sparkled as she stared at Bufong. Mengqi was naturally shocked. Bufong's cultivation base had improved, and so had Bufong's cooking skills. Now, Bufong's cooking skills should be much better than hers. Of course, Mengqi still had many questions in her heart. For example, where did Realm Lord Dick go? Did he get the final divine chef's inheritance? And why did Bufong come out first? She wanted to ask more, but she decided to wait for Bufong to cook a perfect dish first. When it came to food, Nyo Han-san was very excited. He eagerly walked out of the wooden house with a table, placing it in front of everyone. Then, a blue and white porcelain plate was placed on the table. The blue and white porcelain plate was so clean that it seemed to reflect people's faces. All of a sudden, sizzling hot air rose up. Bufong's face was expressionless as he pointed at the black turtle constellation wok. Immediately, the 4 steaks in the wok flew out. They slowly spun in the air, shaking the beef fat inside. It seemed that the taste of the steaks had become purer. Clatter. The 4 steaks accurately landed on the blue and white porcelain plate. Then, he tidied up the wok. Bufong came in front of the wooden table. He placed the cutlery and utensils on the table. Then he took out a white cloth and wiped the stains on the porcelain plate, leaving nothing behind. This was Bufong's habit. The steaks seemed to emit a faint radiance. A layer of sauce was poured over the steaks. This sauce was Bufong's harvest from the abyss. It was a mixture of spices and abyssal chili sauce. The sauce was poured over the steaks, making the fragrance of the steak stronger. You couldn't wait to sit at the table. Bufong had other actions for used steaks. He took out a crystal fruit of life, crushed it, and sprinkled it on the steaks. The energy of the crystal fruit seeped into the steaks. Then, he took out a small jar that looked like a crystal. There was only less than half of the crystal source purple essence left in the jar. He scooped up a small spoonful of the crystal source purple essence and poured it on used steaks. The energy immediately dispersed and mixed with the sauce. "Hurry up and eat," Bufong said. Bufong glanced at you. Nyo Han-san looked at used steaks, which were overflowing with energy, and then looked at his own dish. His heart immediately became unbalanced. Why did you have to have the crystal fruit of life and the crystal source purple essence as ingredients? Honorbu, I also want it, Nyo Han-san immediately said. Mengqi speechlessly rolled her eyes at Nyo Han-san. This foolish cow. Then Mengqi grabbed her knife and fork, cut a piece of steak, and stuffed it in her mouth. The tender steak had a fragrant gravy, and it was just the right amount of grease. After eating it, her somewhat frightened heart calmed down, and she felt a warm feeling in her heart. As expected of the great demon's dish, being able to eat such a dish was really a blessing. Mengqi thought inwardly. Nyo Han-san was still resisting unfairly. However, Bufong leisurely cut a piece of beef with his knife, stabbed it into the meat, and put it into his mouth. Slowly, he raised his head. With an expressionless face, he looked at Nyo Han-san. That gaze, instantly, Nyo Han-san, who was waving his knife and fork, stopped moving. He didn't even dare to let out a fart. The corners of Yu's red lips slightly rose. Then, she stuck out her tongue, licking the sauce on the steak. A majestic wave of spirit energy instantly entered her body, causing her eyes to brighten. Waving their knives and forks, they began to eat. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, you contentedly entered the netherworld ship. As for Bu Fong and Johan San, they enjoyed lying on the chairs in front of the wooden house. Mengqi clasped her hands, then floated away, wandering around the heaven and earth farmland. While they were enjoying themselves, Bu Fong began to observe the rewards. First was the fragment of the God of Cooking set. Regarding the next piece of the God of Cooking set, Bu Fong had always been looking forward to it. Now that he had collected 2 pieces, Bu Fong wasn't sure how many pieces the last piece of the God of Cooking set needed. No matter what, this last piece of the God of Cooking set was absolutely extraordinary. The second reward was the cooking method of the sword pot dish. Sword pot. This was something Bu Fong had never heard of before. Moreover, the system hadn't given out a cooking method reward for a long time. Regarding this reward, Bu Fong was a little curious. Of course, curiosity was just curiosity. For the time being, Bu Fong hadn't read and accepted the sword pot cooking method. At this moment, Bu Fong wanted to relax a little. There was also the third reward, the qualification to possess the body. This was the reward that Bu Fong was looking forward to the most. Currently, Bu Fong had the dragon bone kitchen knife spirit, the golden divine dragon, the vermilion robe spirit, the flaming vermilion bird, and the black turtle constellation walks spirit, the sky-dominating black tortoise, and the white tiger heaven stove spirit, the proud white tiger. These artifact spirits were very strong. Some of them had accompanied Bu Fong as he grew up, so Bu Fong knew how strong they were. But when it came to possession, Bu Fong had no idea what it was. System, this qualification to possess the body by the artifact spirit. What does it mean? Bu Fong asked the system. The system was silent for a while, then gave a faint answer. The host could try it once. As soon as the system finished, Bu Fong was stunned. Then his mind flickered. His spirit sea suddenly surged with waves. The golden divine dragon, which was originally coiled in Bu Fong's spirit sea, suddenly opened its eyes, which emitted a dazzling radiance. A dragon's roar resounded. Its aura suddenly rose. In front of the wooden hut, Johan San, who was leisurely lying on a chair with Bu Fong, smacked his lips in satisfaction. The gentle wind blew, making him feel extremely comfortable. Suddenly, an unparalleled pressure suddenly burst forth. Neo Hansen's eyes suddenly widened. He turned his head to look at Bu Fong as if he had seen a ghost. With one look, the ox's eyes almost popped out. Chapter 12:21. That resplendent golden light was so dazzling that it shot into the sky, blinding Neo Hansen's eyes. It was like a precious treasure that had been covered in dust for a long time was suddenly wiped away. Its brilliance, which had been covered for countless years, suddenly broke free and revealed its brilliance. A dragon's roar resounded from the 9 heavens, lingering in Neo Hansen's ears. It caused goosebumps to rise all over Neo Hansen's body. The pressure descended, ruthlessly pressing down on Neo Hansen's body. A cracking sound rang out. The wooden chair that Neo Hansen was sitting on instantly shattered. His plump body suddenly fell to the ground, and all the fat on his body trembled at this moment. What the F***? This was the first sentence Neo Hansen shouted after opening his eyes wide. In front of his eyes, the golden light gradually dispersed. Soon, the true appearance of the source of light was revealed. What the F***? It was still the same what the F***. At this moment, only this sentence could fully express the shock in Neo Hansen's heart. Boo. Owner Boo. Neo Hansen took a deep breath. He felt that everything in front of him was fake, because in front of him, Bu Fong's figure was standing there. That's right. It was a curvy figure, the kind that had a curvy figure. Swish, a wave of golden light circulated, accompanied by a rhythmic dragon roar. Then, his golden hair fluttered, and a dazzling radiance shot out from his blurred eyes. Hey, little Nyonyo. Bu Fong squinted his eyes. He propped his chin up with one hand and placed the other on his waist. That posture was enchanting and dazzling. Nyohan-san was dumbfounded. They were obviously lying on the chair together. Why did Onorbu suddenly go crazy? He even dyed his hair in an instant. He had to admit that this golden hair was quite beautiful. Wait a minute, little Nyonyo. Onorbu, who is your little cow called? Nyohansen's lips were trembling as he asked in a trembling voice. Little cow is calling you. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth curled up, revealing a smile that sent chills down Nyohansen's spine. He even raised his eyebrows at Nyohan-san. Nyohan-san was stunned. Unprecedented, heaven and earth collapsing, the three views of the world destroyed, the end of the world. He had never thought that Onorbu's expressionless face could actually reveal such a difficult smile. He even raised his eyebrows. How did Onorbu know how to smile? Smiling at him? Was he addicted to eating steak? Did he take a fancy to old cow's righteous meat? Bufong. Well, maybe he shouldn't be called Bufong. This person wasn't Bufong at all. I can finally come out for a walk. Tool spirit possession. I didn't expect this little host to comprehend such a difficult operation in such a short time. Bufong rubbed his face, an unfathomable smile appearing on his face. Nyohan-san looked as if he had seen a ghost. His mouth moved up and down. But little host still has a conscience. This handsome dragon has accompanied him for so long. If he doesn't let this handsome dragon experience tool spirit possession first, this dragon won't let him off. Bufong muttered something under his breath. The hand that was rubbing his face was stroking his hair. The ends of his golden hair fluttered. Are you still Onorbu? Nyohansen's eyes widened as he said in disbelief. He gulped down a mouthful of saliva. This guy was definitely not the incomparably cold, expressionless Onorbu. Which flirtatious slut dared to have sex with Onorbu? Or Nyohan-san was terrified. Could this be Onorbu's second personality that he had been hiding for a long time? But made sense. He was expressionless every day. He must have gotten sick from holding it in. Buzz, all of a sudden Nyohansen's eyes shrank. The golden-haired Bufong's figure suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, he was already holding Nyohansen's neck. Nyohan-san felt that his thick neck was about to be broken. His mouth opened, and his eyes widened. How could he be so intimate with Onorbu? This was unprecedented intimacy. Onorbu's secret had been discovered. Was he going to kill him? Little cow is calling you. Also, this handsome dragon has to remind you that I'm not Bufong. You can call me Nicholas the Handsome Dragon. Blonde Bufong had a smile on his face as he reached out and patted Nyohansen's horn. What's that? Nyohansen was dumbfounded. Say your name again if you dare. It's not that. It's Nicholas the Handsome Dragon. Blonde Bufong said solemnly. Nyohan-san felt that the world seemed to be a little messy and bumpy. After pondering for a while, he said, It's not as good as this old bull's Nyohansen. Blonde Bufong was not convinced. How can Nicholas the Handsome Dragon not compare to you? A rustic Nyohan-san. Tell me? If you don't tell me, I'll skin you alive. Blonde Bufong tightened his grip on Nyohansen's neck. Nyohan-san felt very aggrieved. Be reasonable. Nicholas the Handsome Dragon. What kind of weird thing was this? How could it be as simple and direct as Nyohan-san? Suddenly, the corner of Blonde Bufong's mouth twitched. His face changed. He loosened his grip on Nyohansen's neck. Blonde Bufong waved his hand helplessly, his face filled with helplessness. All right, I don't want to waste time. It's not easy for me to come out for a breath of fresh air, and you won't let me stay a little longer. You're really stingy, Blonde Bufong said helplessly. Then, his golden hair began to slowly turn into a greenish-black color. In his spirit's sea, expressionlessly, Bufong hovered in midair. In the distance, Vermilion Bird widened its eyes, staring at him. The white tiger was lying in the distance, glancing at him. The black turtle was motionless. I told you, you should let me out. That stupid dragon is a retard. What a waste of time. Vermilion Bird seemed a little indignant. Her pleasant voice lingered in his spirit sea. Bufong's face was expressionless. He felt that he had made a wrong decision. Artifact spirit possession. Is this what it means? It seems a little. Bufong was speechless. Well, little host, don't be fooled by that stupid dragon. He's strong. Spirit possession will be your main attack for a long time, Vermilion Bird said. Her eyes seemed to look at Bufong strangely. We didn't expect that little host could activate spirit possession so quickly. But it's good. We old fellows haven't gone out for a breath of fresh air for tens of thousands of years. What's the use of spirit possession? Bufong sat cross-legged in the spirit sea, his black hair fluttering in the wind. He looked at Vermilion Bird, his face expressionless. What about the so-called spirit possession? With your consent, the few of us old fellows can temporarily take control of your body, allowing your physical body to possess an extremely powerful combat strength. This combat strength is very strong. Of course, there's a limit to the duration of this possession. Little host's current cultivation base should be at the half-step saint realm. This cultivation base is still not good enough, but I don't know what opportunity little host had to activate this skill, so little host's body shouldn't be able to withstand it for too long. About the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn is the limit. In the future, as little host cultivation base increases, the duration of spirit possession should also increase, Vermilion Bird explained. Spirit possession. Will you seize the opportunity to seize my body? Bufong asked with a frown. Vermilion Bird was stunned. Then, he glanced at Bufong with a faint smile and said, You are the host. How would we dare to do that? Besides, you are the controller of the artifact spirit possession. If you want to withdraw from the possession during the process, you could do so directly. Most importantly, occupying the host's body. You'll be punished 1,000 times, Vermilion Bird said with a smile. In the distance, White Tiger, who was lying on the ground, snorted. Obviously, he found Bufong's idiotic question a little ridiculous. The black turtle was still floating motionlessly. Bufong pondered. With his hands clasped behind his back, he seemed to understand the function of spirit possession. His mind flickered. His spirit sea immediately surged with stormy waves. Then a golden divine dragon suddenly emerged in his spirit sea. Nicholas the handsome dragon, haven't gotten enough air. Why am I back? The golden divine dragon widened his eyes, his long and narrow body tossing and turning in the spirit sea. Vermilion Bird, White Tiger, and Bufong all stared at him indifferently. Finally, the golden divine dragon stopped talking. Nicholas the handsome dragon? You big worm. How dare you flatter yourself? Why don't you use the name given to you by the previous host? Vermilion Bird said sarcastically. Why did you mention the name given by the previous host? If you don't want me to be called Nicholas the handsome dragon, then don't. Why did you mention the previous host? Little host is here. Don't you think it's inappropriate? How about this? Little host, give this handsome dragon a name. In the future, when this handsome dragon goes out, I can introduce myself. The golden divine dragon rolled his eyes at Vermilion Bird, then looked at Bufong. Bufong glanced indifferently at the golden divine dragon. Oh, then you'll be called Goldie, Bufong said. The golden divine dragon's struggling body suddenly froze. He seemed to have made a very stupid decision. He actually asked Bufong to give him a name. This little host was the same as the previous host. He was a complete failure at naming things. Then, ignoring the golden divine dragon's hopeless expression, Bufong turned to look at Vermilion Bird. Don't, little host, just give this stupid dragon a name. I have a nice name, Fusong. I'm called Mulberry, Vermilion Bird said hurriedly. Bufong was taken aback. He nodded, then turned to look at White Tiger in the distance. White Tiger's fur seemed to stand on end. This White Tiger also has a name. It's called Howling. White Tiger said, raising his head proudly. Oh, then give me a howl. Bufong said expressionlessly. Howling, give me a howl. Bufong said. White Tiger stared at Bufong, his face expressionless. If this guy wasn't the host, he would be the first to slap him to death. White Tiger was acting arrogant again. Bufong twitched his mouth, then turned to look at Black Turtle. Black Turtle's body emitted an earthy yellow halo. He seemed to have sensed Bufong's gaze. His eyes moved slightly and fell on Bufong. Little host, this turtle also has a name, Black Turtle said. What's your name? Bufong was curious. Black Turtle, Black Turtle said. Bufong nodded. This name is nice. It's much more interesting than howling. From afar, White Tiger let out a furious roar. Nyohan-san was almost strangled to death. However, all of a sudden, the huge force on his neck loosened. Nyohan-san coughed for a while and looked at Bufong. He was shocked again. Boo, owner Boo. Nyohan-san looked at the black-haired Bufong and asked uncertainly. Whatever you see or hear next, don't take it seriously. It's not done by me, Bufong. Bufong looked at Nyohan-san and said expressionlessly. What did he mean? Nyohan-san was confused again. Why was Owner Boo's words so profound now? Boom! In the next moment, a tremendous pressure appeared once again. This time, there was a fiery aura in the pressure. Boom! Nyohan-san was shocked. He hurriedly retreated a few steps, clutching his neck. He widened his eyes and looked over, his eyes filled with vigilance. Flames appeared in the distance, as if there was a red flame burning. The vermilion robe on Owner Boo seemed to have come to life, constantly emitting a red light, as if there was a vermilion bird flying, its feathers fluttering. The red-haired Owner Boo turned his head and looked at Nyohan-san. The charm that appeared on his face, it made Nyohan-san feel a chill from the soles of his feet. At this moment, there was only one sentence left in Nyohan-san's mind. F***CK. He had never realized Owner Boo could actually be so charming. Chapter 1222. The golden-haired Owner Boo. Forget about it. But now, there was a red-haired Owner Boo. This was really not something people were used to. Especially this red-haired Owner Boo. He seemed to be somewhat attractive and charming. This was the scariest part. Nyohan-san stared blankly. He found that Bufong's eyes seemed to be a little blurred. The vermilion robe on his body was fluttering, raising a scarlet flame. The flame shone on Bufong's face, making the latter's fair skin look as if it was reflecting the fire. What the F***CK? Nyohan-san shouted again. He found that today, his view of the world was mercilessly trampled and ravaged by Owner Boo. It seemed that Nyohan-san's shout had interrupted Bufong's indulgence. The latter turned his head and looked over, slightly tilting his head, his eyes locking onto Nyohan-san. Oh, a little cow, the red-haired Bufong said with a light smile. With this smile, Bufong instantly raised his hand. The vermilion robe caressed his skin, revealing his fair palm. His slender fingers slightly bent, covering his upturned lips. That look, it was as if a little girl was shy and timid. Every frown and smile seemed to be full of seductive gestures, stirring up people's hearts. So terrifying. What was wrong with Owner Boo? You. Nyohan-san sat on the ground. His face flushed and his mouth trembled. He couldn't say a word. That feeling of holding his words made him want to bang his head on the ground. I am a different kind of fireworks. I am Fusong. Nice to meet you. The red-haired Bufong said with a smile. With this smile, he raised his palm again, his little fingers slightly curled up, covering his lips. Every frown and smile seemed shy and timid. Nyohan-san's whole body trembled, and goosebumps appeared on his skin. Owner Boo, don't be like this. We are all on the same side. Don't be scared. After speaking to Nyohan-san, the red-haired Bufong swung his arms, slowly walking toward the heaven and earth farmland. The fresh air drifted over, causing the red-haired Bufong to squint his eyes and take a deep breath. The fragrance of grass, the fragrance of immortal medicine. All kinds of fragrances lingered in the mouth and nose of the red-haired Bufong, making him close his eyes in enjoyment. He spread his arms wide. It spun around on the spot. As he spun, the vermilion robe actually fluttered, as if it was a vermilion bird that had come to life, spreading its wings and flying high. In the distance, Nyohan-san, who was following Bufong, twitched his mouth when he saw this. He believed that Owner must have gone out for a big fight and damaged his brain. What should he do now? Owner had gone crazy. How could he still do things properly? Ha ha! A laughter that was as clear as a silver bell rang out. Nyohan-san saw Bu-fong smiling cheerfully as he raised his palm. It was unknown why a vermilion bird condensed from flames appeared on his fingertip. The vermilion bird landed on the red-haired Bu-fong's fingertip, spreading its wings. The scene was beautiful. However, he felt that something was wrong. A rustling sound came from the bushes. Then a little chick's head popped out. The 8 treasures chicken curiously looked at the dancing Bu-fong, its small eyes filled with curiosity. Above the chick's head, a huge head also popped out. It was the head of the 8 treasures pig. The pig's nose twitched, looking over curiously. All of a sudden, the red-haired Bu-fong flicked his finger. Instantly, the vermilion bird on his head dispersed. His gaze turned, landing on the bushes in the distance. There, the chicken's feathers instantly stood on end. Without hesitation, it turned around and ran. This kind of caring gaze. Why was it so strange? Buzz. However, 80 had just taken a step forward, and its figure had yet to rush out. It was picked up by someone. It was unknown when the red-haired Bu-fong had grabbed its head, but it was already in his hands. What a fast speed. Nyohan-san took a deep breath. He didn't even notice whether the red-haired Bu-fong moved or not. In the blink of an eye, 80 was caught. The current 80 had eaten countless heavenly and earthly treasures, and it could be considered a top-grade immortal ingredient. Moreover, the 8 treasures chicken was famous for its fast movement speed. The current 80, with its explosive speed, might not even be able to catch up to the little saint. However, what happened just now? What is going on with that speed? What a cute little chick. The red-haired Bu-fong's face was filled with a doting smile. He rubbed 80's head, holding it in his palms. His eyes were filled with love. 80 panicked. This stinky chef, please don't look at the cute 80 with that kind of caring gaze. 80's heart trembled. Finally, it couldn't help but kneel on Bu-fong's palms. Its wings patted together, and it couldn't help but nod, begging for mercy. Too cute. The red-haired Bu-fong's heart was filled with joy. He rubbed 80's head with both hands, making the latter want to die. Rustle, rustle. In the distance, when the 8 treasures pig saw 80's miserable state, it was instantly scared out of its wits. Without saying a word, it mooed and ran wildly across the grassland, the fat on its body trembling. In just a flash, it was far away. 80 looked at the 8 treasures pig, and its eyes seemed to have an incomprehensible heartbreak. In his spirit's sea, sensing everything that the vermilion bird mulberry had done, Bu-fong was speechless. This vermilion bird and the divine dragon were not much different. He exhaled softly. He finally understood that in the heaven and earth farmland, he couldn't use the power of the tool spirit possession. However, the speed that the vermilion bird mulberry had just shown made Bu-fong a little shocked. That speed was much faster than Xiaopi's. However, Bu-fong's heart was firm. Under normal circumstances, one couldn't use the tool spirit possession. Otherwise, whether it was the divine dragon Goldie or the vermilion bird mulberry, the characters they showed would make people think that Bu-fong was a psychopath. Was in the spirit sea energy swirled. Then, the vermilion bird mulberry's figure emerged. She seemed a little dissatisfied with being called back. She shook her wings, glaring at Bu-fong. Okay, I'm leaving. I understand most of the tool spirit possession now. Bu-fong's face was expressionless. Then, he planned to leave the spirit sea. In the distance, the white tiger howling sky wasn't happy. Its arrogant eyes stared at Bu-fong. I haven't gone out for some fresh air, the white tiger said. As if he had heard the white tiger howling sky, Bu-fong calmly turned his head. Want to go out for some fresh air? Bu-fong asked. When the white tiger heard this, it snorted proudly. Howling, howl, Bu-fong said, his face expressionless. The white tiger howling sky was enraged. It opened its mouth and roared. The corner of Bu-fong's mouth twitched. He snapped his fingers. Then, his figure disappeared from the spirit sea. Waves surged in the spirit sea. The golden divine dragon Goldie recalled the feeling of being possessed, and the vermilion bird Mulberry's eyes were blurry. The black turtle was still motionless. The white tiger was roaring angrily at the side. After a long time, it finally quieted down. I didn't expect Little Host to be able to activate the tool spirit possession so quickly. It seems that he will soon encounter the real ordeal on the road to becoming the god of cooking. The vermilion bird's eyes focused. The road to becoming the god of cooking is not that easy. The real ordeal has just begun. I don't think this kid will succeed. The white tiger snorted. I howling don't think so. I think he's not bad. Compared with the previous icebergs, Little Host is very approachable, the golden divine dragon said with a smile. The previous hosts were all ruthless characters. It's because they were all ruthless characters. I, howling, don't think that kid will succeed because... The white tiger said coldly. Enough. We're just tool spirits. We just need to fulfill our duties. As for the rest, don't worry too much. A series of rumbling sounds resounded. The black turtle, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. The white tiger shut its mouth and snorted proudly. The golden divine dragon and the vermilion bird exchanged a look, feeling somewhat helpless. Bufong opened his eyes. He saw Nyo Han San in the distance, his mouth agape and face full of fear. He also saw Ming Chi, who popped her head out, looking dumbfounded. Bufong felt something soft in his hand. He looked down and saw 80, who had been rubbed so hard that he had lost all hope of living. Bufong arched his brows. Then, with an expressionless face, he flicked his finger, sending 80 flying. The latter fell on the ground like a ball, bouncing a few times. Bufong shook his hand, and the red hair on his head quickly retreated, turning back into a jet-black color. Bufong clasped his hands, looking at the shocked Nyo Han San and the bewildered Ming Chi. What you saw just now wasn't me, Bufong said. Nyo Han San closed his mouth, smacking it. Ming Chi pursed her red lips. Do you think we believe it? Seeing the look in their eyes, the corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. Sure enough, he couldn't use the tool spirit possession in front of others. People would really think of him as a lunatic. Owner Boo, we all know that being a chef is a high-risk job. The pressure is great, and you need a vent. We understand. Nyo Han San stood up, waving his hand. Bufong's face twitched. He glanced sideways at Nyo Han San, and his sharp eyes made Nyo Han San tremble. He felt as if the beef all over his body was shivering. The cold and aloof Owner Boo is back. All right, it's about time for me to go back. Bufong was too lazy to explain to Nyo Han San. Go back. Ming Chi's eyes brightened. Go back to the Heaven Chief realm? Although the farmland was good, Ming Chi still wanted to go back. She didn't know the situation in the Dit realm. If the Dit realm lord died, the entire Heaven Chief realm would fall into chaos. Bufong glanced at Ming Chi. He signaled the latter to follow him. The latter's immortal robe fluttered as she strode forward. Nyo Han San hurriedly rolled and crawled over as well. He glanced at 80, who was sitting on the ground and shivering, sighing inwardly. Nethery's condition had also improved a lot. Bufong came to the wooden hut. After checking Yu's condition, he decided to leave the farmland. His mind flickered. A wave of light shrouded him. Nyo Han San waved his hand. Bufong and the other two disappeared. But the pungent smell of blood filled the air, rushing into Bufong's mouth and nose. Bufong couldn't help but frown, gasping for breath. Yu and Ming Chi couldn't help but cover their mouths and noses. He raised his head and looked around. His surroundings were in ruins, and there was only a large crater. In the distance, he saw the walls of the Abyss City. Congratulations to the host for completing the Abyss mission. You will now return. Do you want to return? In his mind, the system's solemn and serious voice resounded. Bufong was stunned. He didn't need to take Yu's Netherworld ship back. However, since the system could directly send him back, Bufong naturally wouldn't refuse. Yes, Bufong replied. As soon as he said that, the system's voice rang in his head again. Returning begins. Teleportation array, counting down. 10, 9, 8, Ming Chi, and you looked around. Suddenly, Both of their expressions changed slightly, because in the distance rays of scarlet eyes suddenly shot out. A terrifying pressure suddenly approached. "It's you." A furious roar suddenly resounded from the Abyss City. It was like a thunderclap that caused the entire space to explode. Boom! An aura soared into the sky. His blood-colored robe fluttered in the void. The great judge's eyes were extremely cold as he stared at Bu Fong in the deep crater. He recognized Bu Fong. Bu Fong was the one who killed his 4 judges. Hiss! A series of hissing sounds rang out. The abyssal demons roared, flapped their meaty wings, and flew up, letting out sharp howls at Bu Fong and the others. Mengqi's heart trembled. She tightly grabbed the hem of Bu Fong's vermilion robe, her face pale. You glanced at Mengqi and curled her red lips slightly. She also raised her hand and grabbed Bu Fong's sleeve. Bu Fong frowned. He stared at the abyssal demons and the murderous great judge. "You destroyed my abyss array and killed my 4 judges. You human, I'm going to cut you into 1,000 pieces." Swoosh! The void suddenly collapsed. A blood-colored sword appeared in the great judge's hand. The long sword was thrown out fiercely. It seemed to have turned into a blood dragon, shooting toward Bu Fong. The terrible pressure made Mengqi feel as if all the blood in her body was about to be sucked dry. This was the pressure of the great sage, extremely terrifying. Bu Fong also took a deep breath. White spots of light emerged above his head. The blood-colored dragon kept roaring as it charged over. The abyssal demons spread their wings and shot out like black streams of light. "You want to leave? Die!" The great judge roared. The spots of light quickly gathered and soon condensed into a white teleportation array. Buzz, ripples of energy shot out from the formation. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The countdown is over. The return begins. The system's serious voice did not fluctuate at all. Bu Fong stood expressionlessly under the light, looking at the roaring blood dragon. The terrifying pressure seemed to be able to shatter the void. Mengqi and Yu's grip on Bu Fong's vermilion robe grew tighter and tighter. They felt their hearts tighten, and they closed their eyes. Boom! A sudden explosion rang out. The ground, which was already a deep pit, suddenly exploded. A loud rumbling sound spread out. The entire ground was blasted apart, crumbling unceasingly. After a long time, the smoke and dust dissipated. Only the blood-colored sword was left in the ground. One by one, the abyssal demons let out unwilling roars. The great judge's body was shrouded in blood energy, and he was furious. That young man, he had escaped right under his nose. He, the great sage, had let a half-step saint run away after showing off. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.